What if humanity's last hope wasn't on Earth, but 140 million miles away on a cold, red desert? That was the question lingering in the air on a crisp, windswept morning at SpaceX's starbase in Boca Chica, Texas. Cameras clicked, journalists murmured, and millions tuned in worldwide as Elon Musk stood under the glaring sun, wearing a black jacket and a half-smile that meant only one thing: something was coming. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? He began, in his signature off-the-cuff delivery. Then came the bombshell: Starship departs for Mars at the end of next year. The crowd gasped. Musk continued, if those landings go well, then human landings may start as soon as 2029, although 2031 is more likely. The air pulsed with disbelief and anticipation. Musk had teased this moment for years, but now there was a date. A countdown had begun, not just to a launch, but to an entirely new chapter of human history. As headlines lit up, reactions from around the world poured in. Hope, skepticism, excitement, and fear clashed in newsrooms, classrooms, and kitchens from California to Kenya. Was this real? Could humans really colonize Mars in our lifetime? For Elon Musk, this was never a fantasy, it was a necessity. He had warned for years about Earth's vulnerability to extinction-level events, natural or human-made. To Musk, space wasn't an escape. It was a backup plan, a way to safeguard human consciousness itself. For months leading up to this moment, rumors had swirled about accelerated timelines. Internal SpaceX documents leaked, suggesting rapid progress in Starship development. Photos from the Texas site showed round-the-clock construction. But no one expected Musk to actually set a date. And yet here it was, 2029. Less than 5 years away. Behind the scenes, engineers, scientists, and logistics teams had been working on an uncrewed test mission, Starship 001, that would launch in early 2026. Its mission was to deliver Tesla's humanoid robot Optimus, supply modules, and infrastructure elements to Arcadia Planitia, the flattest region on Mars. This spot had been selected for its stable terrain and suspected subsurface ice, which could provide water and fuel. The reaction among experts was mixed. Some applauded Musk's boldness. Others questioned whether humanity was truly ready. The challenges were enormous: radiation, psychological isolation, life support, transport logistics, and above all, sustainability. And yet, Musk wasn't backing down. "We either stay on Earth and risk extinction," he tweeted, "or become a spacefaring civilization and a multi-planet species." That tweet went viral instantly. Inside SpaceX, morale soared. Engineers worked 14-hour days fueled by coffee, adrenaline, and a kind of belief usually reserved for revolutionaries. They knew what was at stake. Meanwhile, news anchors debated the ethics and economics. Should billions be spent on Mars while Earth faced poverty and climate collapse? Was this visionary or vanity? But Musk had already answered that. "This is not about abandoning Earth," he said during the press conference. "It's about backing up the hard drive of human civilization." That single sentence changed the narrative. Suddenly, this wasn't just about Mars. It was about survival. It was about legacy. It was about hope. Across the globe, classrooms lit up with new energy. Kids pointed at Mars globes, dreaming of becoming astronauts or engineers. Teenagers opened coding programs and physics textbooks. A cultural shift began to stir. If Mars was the new frontier, then maybe anything was possible. Meanwhile, preparations moved at warp speed. SpaceX's Boca Chica site swelled with new hires, concrete pads, and assembly towers. A new Starship prototype was rolled out within weeks of the announcement. Its skin glinted like silver under the Texas sun, and the words, "To Mars," were emblazoned in crimson across its fuselage. Optimus units were updated with AI interfaces capable of complex repairs, mining tasks, and scientific analysis. They were designed to work tirelessly in Martian conditions, with reinforced joints, solar recharging ports, and internal processors capable of adapting to terrain. Critics called them glorified toys. Musk called them our first Martians. While engineers tested landing sequences and fail-safes, another crucial piece of the puzzle was under construction, the orbital refueling system. This was perhaps the most vital link in Musk's plan. Starships couldn't make a round trip to Mars on a single tank. Instead, fuel depots would orbit Earth and Mars, allowing vessels to refuel mid-mission. Without it, the plan collapsed. With it, Mars became reachable, not just for probes, but for people. And yet, many inside SpaceX were anxious. What if the refueling failed? What if the lander crashed? What if the robots malfunctioned? But Musk's approach to failure was clear: fail fast, learn faster. Each explosion is a step closer, he'd say after a crash. The future is built on mistakes we're not afraid to make. And so they pushed forward. In September 2026, the first test launch was scheduled. Starship 001, uncrewed, loaded with Optimus bots and 20 metric tons of cargo, stood on the launch pad. The world tuned in again. Schoolchildren watched in real time. Retired astronauts held their breath. The countdown began. 10. 9. 8. Liftoff. The engines roared with thunder, and the gleaming ship rose into the sky, trailing fire and dreams behind it. Initial ascent was flawless. Boosters detached, stage separation occurred on cue, and orbital insertion was a success. Starship 001 was on its way to Mars. The journey would take months. During that time, SpaceX monitored its trajectory, adjusted flight paths, and ran simulations for every possible failure mode. Finally, the day came: Mars entry. The atmosphere was thin but unforgiving. If the heat shields failed, the mission was lost. But they held. The ship slowed, adjusted, and descended. A camera inside the ship streamed live images as Martian soil came into view. Red dunes. Black craters. Dust storms on the horizon. At 12:14 p.m. Earth time, Starship 001 touched down. Cheers erupted in SpaceX control. People cried. Musk smiled, and tweeted only 2 words: "We're here." But it wasn't just about being there. The Optimus bots activated within an hour. They rolled down the landing ramp, solar panels whirring to life, and began their first task: setting up a communications array. Within 24 hours, the first signal bounced from Mars to Earth, declaring success. Musk's team had done it. The first intelligent machines walked on another world, preparing it for human life. The emotional weight of that achievement rippled around the globe. This was no longer a dream. It was a process. The world watched as Optimus units began their work, analyzing soil, testing for water, assembling basic habitat frames from modular components. Over time, their speed improved. Their code adapted. They learned. They built. They prepared. Musk, ever the showman, live-streamed their progress weekly. People were glued to screens, watching robots inch humanity forward one bolt at a time. But something else began to stir. Rumors. Whispers. A secret payload on board. Some said SpaceX had sent something hidden, something not listed in official cargo manifests. Conspiracies abounded: AI servers, human embryos, a secret prototype colonist. Musk refused to comment, only smiling cryptically when asked. And then came a leak. A SpaceX technician anonymously posted an internal document titled Eden Module. It contained schematics of a biodome, human-compatible atmosphere generators, and, most shocking of all, a human cryopod labeled AR-01. The internet exploded. Was someone already on Mars? Was Musk testing human survival in secret? SpaceX denied it. Governments demanded answers. NASA distanced itself. But Musk's next tweet only deepened the mystery: the future belongs to those who build it. Even if they must sleep through the beginning. The world wasn't ready. Not for Mars. Not for the truth. And as the sun set over the Martian horizon, casting long shadows over Optimus bots tirelessly constructing the next chapter of human history, one question echoed louder than all the others: what had Elon Musk really sent to Mars? Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Before he became a symbol of interplanetary ambition, Elon Musk was a quiet, often isolated boy with a head full of strange ideas and a relentless drive to understand how things worked. Born on June 28, 1971, in Pretoria, South Africa, Elon Reeve Musk grew up in a world far removed from the red dust of Mars. His father, Errol Musk, was an engineer with a complicated and sometimes volatile personality, while his mother, May, was a dietitian and model who would later become a steady source of pride and support. From an early age, Elon stood apart, not just in intelligence but in intensity. He devoured science fiction, read the entire Encyclopedia Britannica before he turned 10, and taught himself computer programming at 12, creating and selling a video game called Blaster. His imagination wasn't bound by what was, it revolved around what could be. But Elon's childhood was far from idyllic. School was brutal. He was bullied relentlessly, often physically assaulted, once so severely that he ended up in the hospital. The trauma didn't harden him in the typical sense, it made him inward, reflective, and obsessive. He turned pain into focus. While other kids played sports or chased distractions, Elon was dreaming about rockets, robots, and ways to solve energy problems. He envisioned colonies on other planets before he'd even left middle school. Yet he was not always taken seriously. To most adults around him, Elon's ideas were the fantasies of a loner kid with too much time and not enough grounding. But to Elon, the world's indifference wasn't a deterrent, it was fuel. By the time he moved to Canada at 17 and later transferred to the University of Pennsylvania, Musk had already mapped out his life's mission. In one interview, he explained that he narrowed down the 5 things that would most impact the future of humanity. The Internet, sustainable energy, space exploration, artificial intelligence, and reprogramming human genetics. These weren't ambitions, they were tasks. He wasn't chasing wealth. He was reverse engineering the future. His years at Penn were marked by a duality: he studied both physics and economics, bridging the theoretical with the practical. At night, he read scientific journals and coded for money. During the day, he dreamed of how to make humanity an interplanetary species. After college, Musk moved to Silicon Valley, right as the internet boom was beginning to swell. His first company, Zip2, was modest in concept, a kind of digital Yellow Pages, but Musk threw himself into it with full force. When Zip2 sold to Compaq for nearly $300 million, Musk didn't celebrate, he reinvested. Next came X.com, an online bank that would eventually morph into PayPal. Musk clashed with co-founders, was ousted as CEO, and watched his company grow without him, but when PayPal sold to eBay for $1.5 billion, Musk walked away with his first fortune. Still, money had never been the point. Now, he had fuel for something bigger. He poured over $100 million into starting a private space company, something many considered laughable. At the time, NASA was scaling back, and the notion of a private company succeeding where governments failed was absurd. But Musk wasn't interested in safe bets. He founded SpaceX in 2002 with the explicit mission to colonize Mars. The early years were brutal. SpaceX's first 3 launches failed spectacularly. The company was burning cash. Engineers worked 7 days a week under intense pressure. Musk poured in his own money to keep it afloat, and by 2008, both SpaceX and Tesla, his electric car company, were on the brink of collapse. He famously had to choose where to put the last of his liquidity, Tesla or SpaceX. He split it. Everyone thought he was done. But in December 2008, SpaceX's Falcon 1 became the first privately developed liquid-fueled rocket to reach orbit. Shortly after, NASA awarded SpaceX a $1.6 billion contract to resupply the International Space Station. SpaceX had survived. More than that, it had broken the rules. From there, Musk's empire accelerated. He launched Falcon 9, then Falcon Heavy. He started Neuralink to connect brains with computers, and the Boring Company to tunnel under cities. But Mars was never far from his mind. Every rocket was a prototype. Every success brought him closer to the goal that had never changed since childhood. While Tesla transformed the auto industry and Solar City pushed sustainable energy, SpaceX worked on the ultimate vision, Starship. It wasn't just another rocket. It was a 400-foot-tall behemoth, capable of carrying over 100 people and 100 metric tons of cargo to another planet. It was the tool Musk believed could change the trajectory of human history. Yet behind the swagger and sarcasm of his Twitter persona, Elon remained deeply introspective. In private conversations, he often spoke about the fragility of civilization. He worried that we were building towers without foundations, relying on systems that could collapse with a single virus, a war, or an environmental collapse. Mars wasn't an escape hatch. It was a lifeboat. Musk's personal life remained turbulent. Multiple marriages, public controversies, and accusations of toxicity swirled around him. He could be both inspiring and exhausting, a genius and a taskmaster, revered and resented, often by the same people. Employees at Tesla and SpaceX described him as a man who could push them to their limits, break them down, but also pull them into a cause so grand they'd crawl through fire to achieve it. He didn't lead with kindness. He led with vision. And for those who could endure the chaos, the reward was history. Yet as Musk aged into his 50s, something began to change. His tone shifted. His tweets became more philosophical. He started speaking more openly about his legacy, about being remembered not for wealth or fame, but for setting humanity on a new path. He was still disruptive, still polarizing, but he had also become a cultural archetype, the mad genius with one foot on Earth and the other already lifting off. When Musk first visited the Starbase site in Boca Chica, it was nothing more than sand, sea, and a few concrete blocks. Within a decade, it had transformed into a launch complex that rivaled anything NASA had built. It was here that Musk would pace alone at night, walking the launch pads, staring at the stars above, visualizing the first city on Mars. It wasn't hubris. It was obsession. And as he announced the timeline for Mars landings, first cargo, then human, there was a palpable sense that he wasn't bluffing. Elon Musk had never cared if people laughed. He'd been laughed at all his life. He built Tesla when people said electric cars were toys. He started SpaceX when people said it was impossible. And now, as he pointed toward a dusty red speck in the night sky, he was once again doing what he did best, daring humanity to aim higher. But underneath the headlines and the drama, Elon remained something simpler, a dreamer. A boy who read Asimov and Clarke, who built rocket models in his garage, who asked himself why humanity hadn't gone to Mars yet, and then decided to fix it. He wasn't just trying to get there. He was trying to take all of us with him. From the beginning, Elon Musk made it clear that his mission wasn't simply about going to Mars, it was about staying there. Going to Mars, he said, was the easy part, surviving there, thriving there, building a society there, that was the real challenge. In every public talk, investor briefing, and tweet storm, Musk returned to one core idea, a self-sustaining civilization on Mars, a second cradle for humanity, an insurance policy against extinction. And not just a research outpost with 10 astronauts like the moon's old ambitions, but a full-blown city with factories, homes, schools, power plants, agriculture, and culture, a place where families could live, raise children, and build futures under a foreign sky. This wasn't science fiction to Musk. It was engineering with a timeline. The foundation of this vision rested on Starship, the most ambitious rocket system ever built. A 120-meter stainless steel giant, it was completely reusable, capable of carrying over 100 tons of cargo or 100 people per launch. Designed for rapid turnaround, each Starship could be refueled in orbit and returned to space again within days, drastically reducing the cost per launch. Musk's target was to get the cost of sending a ton of cargo to Mars down from the current estimated $1 billion per ton to around $100,000 per ton, a 10,000-fold improvement. Without this reduction, no colony could be economically viable. Starship would launch from Earth, rendezvous with fuel tankers in low Earth orbit, then fire its engines toward Mars during the planet's optimal launch window, which only opens every 26 months. On Mars, it would land using retropropulsion, unload cargo, and eventually refuel using methane and oxygen extracted from the Martian atmosphere and surface, using the Sabatier process, allowing it to return to Earth or continue missions elsewhere. But propulsion was only the beginning. The vision required entire supply chains, infrastructure, and technologies that didn't yet exist. Habitats needed to withstand extreme cold, cosmic radiation, and dust storms that could last weeks. Food would have to be grown in pressurized greenhouses, water extracted from underground ice, and energy generated via solar arrays and nuclear reactors. Every system had to be closed-loop, waste-free, and autonomous to survive. Even more critical than tech was the question of people, who would go. Musk's answer: volunteers, driven by purpose, not pay. It'll be dangerous, hard, uncomfortable, he warned in one Q&A, you might die. But if you survive, it'll be glorious. Musk knew that only a certain type of person would take that risk, not for profit, but for meaning. He compared them to the pioneers who crossed oceans, deserts, and mountains to build new civilizations. It would begin with small groups: engineers, botanists, doctors, builders. These people would form the backbone of the early colony, laying foundations, troubleshooting life support systems, building oxygen farms and battery banks, and testing every element of Martian life. But the long-term vision required scale. Thousands, then tens of thousands, and eventually millions of people, building a city unlike any on Earth. This city wouldn't mirror our flaws. It would be a chance to reimagine society. Musk often hinted that Mars would be a kind of reset button, where governance, education, economy, and technology could all be redesigned from first principles. No legacy systems. No bureaucracies. Just necessity and innovation. The early Mars settlement, he proposed, might be governed by direct democracy, powered entirely by solar and nuclear energy, and supported by robotic labor and 3D printing. Robots would handle the heavy lifting, construction, mining, logistics, while humans focused on planning, creation, and culture. Schools would teach survival, science, and self-sufficiency. Hospitals would be small but highly advanced, relying on remote telemedicine and autonomous diagnostic AI. Commerce would be barter-based at first, evolving into a local currency system, perhaps crypto-based. But Musk's vision also extended to the spiritual. Mars, he once said, is about hope. It's about the frontier. It's about giving people a future worth fighting for. He believed the psychological impact of a second home for humanity would be transformative, not just for those who went but for those who stayed. People on Earth would look up and remember that humans weren't stuck here. That we could overcome even the greatest obstacles. That the stars weren't out of reach. Critics called it a fantasy. They pointed to the overwhelming list of unknowns. What happens when someone dies on Mars? How will pregnancies be managed in lower gravity? How do you maintain law and order in a place with no global authority? What happens if Earth cuts off contact? Musk acknowledged these uncertainties but argued that waiting for all answers meant waiting forever. If we don't try, he often said, we guarantee failure. The only way to figure it out is to go. In 2024, he published the Mars Blueprint, a 200-page document detailing the step-by-step process of building the first permanent Martian city. It included transportation schedules, population milestones, engineering diagrams, supply manifests, and simulation data. The plan began with a series of robotic missions, followed by a cargo wave, then human crews, with each mission building on the previous one. The goal, a self-sustaining colony of 1,000 people within 20 years, scaling to 1 million in the next 40. Musk was clear, he didn't want to govern Mars, and SpaceX would not control its politics. "We provide the tools," he said, "but the people who go will create the society." Still, his influence was inevitable. As the builder of the transportation system, SpaceX held immense soft power. The early settlers would rely entirely on Musk's technology, which raised ethical questions about privatized colonization. Could a single company control access to another planet? What safeguards existed to prevent abuse? Musk's response was that open access was the goal. He invited NASA, ESA, and private competitors to develop their own Mars programs. He said he hoped SpaceX would only be the first, not the only. The public, however, seemed captivated by the singularity of his vision. In schools, kids started learning about Mars alongside Earth's continents. Hollywood scrambled to catch up, greenlighting films and series about Martian life. Documentaries followed the Optimus robots on Mars like they were celebrities. Billionaires lined up to invest. Ordinary people started posting videos explaining why they'd volunteer for a one-way trip. It became more than a mission. It became a movement. But Musk knew momentum wasn't enough. He kept pushing for technical progress. He held all-night review sessions with SpaceX engineers. He challenged timelines, slashed costs, and demanded faster iterations. When a prototype exploded, he didn't flinch, he asked for the next version to be ready in 6 weeks. His famous quote echoed in every hangar, "If you're not failing, you're not innovating fast enough." By 2025, Starship was launching every month, ferrying satellites, supplies, and test modules into orbit. The launch cost had dropped by 80%, making space more accessible than ever. In a bold move, Musk partnered with Tesla to adapt its manufacturing lines to produce habitat materials, solar panels, and oxygen generators. Neuralink contributed brain-machine interfaces to help settlers control machines and manage stress. The Boring Company developed drills and tunnelers for underground shelters. It was the full ecosystem of Elon Musk's empire, converging for one goal. Meanwhile, public opinion began to shift. Where Mars had once been seen as a billionaire's fantasy, now it was a matter of national pride and international competition. China accelerated its own Mars program. The European Space Agency sought collaboration. NASA proposed joint missions. But no one matched the scale and speed of Musk's plan. While governments debated, he built. Then came the naming of the first settlement. In a global live stream, Musk stood on the Starbase stage and unveiled the name, Eos, after the Greek goddess of dawn. "This is not the end of Earth," he said. "This is the beginning of everything else." The name captured the sentiment perfectly: hope, renewal, light emerging from darkness. The EOS initiative became the banner for all Mars operations. Merch flooded the internet. Schools launched EOS clubs. A new logo was painted on Starship hulls. Underneath the enthusiasm, however, the pressure was immense. Musk knew that failure, real failure, would be catastrophic. One fatal crewed mission could derail everything. Public confidence could collapse. Governments might intervene. But he believed in taking risks. "We learn to fly by crashing," he told his team. "And we'll learn to live on Mars the same way." By the end of 2026, the first cargo fleet was ready. 4 starships packed with rovers, power systems, food production modules, and Optimus bots were scheduled to depart in the next launch window. The plan was to establish the basic infrastructure: energy, comms, construction bots, emergency shelters. If those succeeded, the first crew would follow in 2029. The timeline was ambitious. Critics said it was reckless. But Musk was unmoved. "We don't have time to be timid," he told reporters. "Earth is fragile. The clock is ticking. We must build a future worth dreaming about, and we must start now." The vision was grand, the excitement contagious, and the countdown to humanity's Martian future had begun in earnest, but behind every launch window, every press conference, and every steel-ribbed promise of a second home for mankind, there lay an invisible wall of challenges that threatened to unravel the dream from its foundations. Elon Musk knew this better than anyone. He had never believed it would be easy, but the sheer volume and gravity of the obstacles they faced made even the most confident engineers pause. The surface of Mars, beautiful in its alien serenity, was also one of the most hostile environments known to science. The planet's thin atmosphere, just 1% the pressure of Earth's, meant humans couldn't breathe without a suit, and any breach in a habitat or suit could lead to death within minutes. Temperatures routinely dropped below -100 degrees Celsius at night, with frequent dust storms sweeping across the barren plains, often lasting weeks and covering entire hemispheres. These weren't light gusts of wind and sand, they were dense, electric-charged clouds of fine dust that could clog filters, scratch solar panels, jam equipment, and blind sensors. The first wave of cargo ships, Starship 002 through 005, had to land during a period of relative calm, but even the best weather forecasting models couldn't guarantee safe descent. The Optimus bots deployed to prepare the site encountered immediate complications. Fine Martian regolith worked its way into their joints, reducing mobility and requiring constant self-cleaning protocols. Solar efficiency dropped by 40% within the first month due to dust accumulation, and power had to be rationed until autonomous maintenance routines were rewritten from Earth. The greenhouses, designed to produce oxygen and grow food hydroponically, faced unexpected failures. Early test crops struggled under Martian gravity, with root systems forming erratically and moisture levels fluctuating too quickly to sustain nutrient uptake. The AI-driven systems managing the environment adjusted slowly, learning in real time what thousands of Earth simulations could not predict. A batch of lettuce grew pale and wilted, the strawberries never bore fruit. It wasn't just agriculture. Water extraction proved far more complicated than expected. The plan had been to drill into subsurface ice using the boring company's autonomous rigs, melt the water, and purify it for use. But the rigs encountered bedrock sooner than models anticipated, and multiple drill heads snapped or overheated. The first usable water didn't come until week 6, and even then, yields were half what had been projected. It was enough to maintain the bots, but nowhere near enough to support humans. On Earth, teams worked in 20-hour shifts to troubleshoot. Elon Musk cancelled public appearances and relocated to the Starbase Command Center, refusing to leave until the water problem was resolved. "There are no weekends on Mars," he told his engineers. "There won't be any here either until we fix this." When the breakthrough finally came, a revised drill cycle paired with a heat exchange module and a custom-designed vibration sensor array, Musk didn't celebrate. He barely looked up from his screen. "Good," he said. "Now double the output." But even as systems came online, questions about sustainability loomed larger than ever. Could the early settlers psychologically survive the conditions? Mars had no sunsets in the traditional sense, no trees, no air you could breathe, no ocean breeze or birdsong. The color red dominated the landscape. Isolation wasn't just physical, it was sensory. To mitigate that, Tesla designed virtual reality headsets that simulated Earth environments. Rainforests, oceans, city streets, but there was debate over whether simulated normalcy would help or harm the mental state of settlers. Would it anchor them emotionally or create dependence on illusions? The medical implications of Martian gravity, just 38% of Earth's, were still largely unknown. Over time, reduced gravity could weaken bones, impair cardiovascular function, and alter balance. Children born on Mars might never be able to safely return to Earth. Musk insisted this was why early settlers had to be fully informed and willing. "Mars isn't for everyone," he tweeted. "It's for those who accept the cost of greatness." Publicly, the Mars program was a media phenomenon. Privately, it was chaos. Supply chains on Earth were strained. A global shortage of rare earth elements delayed production of some key components for the second wave of cargo ships. Launch schedules were disrupted by unexpected geopolitical tensions. Nations that once ignored space suddenly wanted a stake in it. Politicians accused Musk of privatizing a planetary future without international oversight. He was subpoenaed to testify before a UN committee, where he famously said, "Mars belongs to those who build it. If you want a seat at the table, send a rocket." Some hailed it as bold leadership. Others saw it as dangerous arrogance. Meanwhile, back on Mars, a new crisis erupted: radiation shielding. The habitats had been constructed with inflatable domes reinforced with polyethylene, chosen for its hydrogen content and radiation-absorbing qualities. But measurements from the surface revealed that cosmic radiation levels during solar flare events were 20% higher than models had predicted. That meant the protective structures were inadequate. The long-term cancer risk for future colonists had just increased dramatically. Engineers scrambled to implement emergency shielding, stacking regolith over the habitat roofs using automated rovers, reinforcing internal walls with water tanks, and preparing emergency bunkers in case of a solar storm. Musk responded by ordering the development of underground living quarters. "The first city on Mars won't be on the surface," he declared. "It'll be beneath it." The Boring Company's tunneling machines were prepped for deployment on the next cargo flight. It would be a city of tunnels, pressurized tubes, and buried sanctuaries. Not the utopia people had imagined, but perhaps the only viable option. There were deeper challenges still. Communication between Earth and Mars was limited by the speed of light. Messages took anywhere from 4 to 24 minutes one way, depending on planetary alignment. That meant no real-time conversations, no immediate instructions, and no safety net. The Mars crew would be autonomous, by necessity. AI systems like the Optimus network had to evolve rapidly. These weren't just tools, they were lifelines. If a life support system failed, an Optimus had to fix it. If a medical emergency occurred, AI had to assess vitals and suggest treatment. Human doctors on Earth would be too far away to help in time. The AI had to be both brilliant and ethical. Neuralink deployed advanced neural training frameworks to improve decision-making, but critics warned that over-reliance on AI could lead to unpredictable results. A misdiagnosis or software glitch could cost lives. There were calls for international oversight of Mars AI, but Musk resisted. "We need speed, not bureaucracy," he said. "The future won't wait for permission." As the Mars colony struggled through these growing pains, public interest began to split. Some still saw it as humanity's greatest adventure. Others saw it as a reckless vanity project. Still, the missions continued. By mid-2027, the second wave of cargo ships launched. These carried expanded life support systems, new agriculture units, and a pair of tunnel boring machines named Thor and Athena. Musk posted a picture of them with the caption, "Builders of the New World." On arrival, the bots deployed with clockwork precision, carving entry shafts and stabilizing pressure chambers. Subsurface construction had begun. On Earth, training of the first human crew intensified. The candidates, scientists, engineers, doctors, biologists, and mission specialists, were subjected to rigorous testing. Physical endurance, mental resilience, technical skills, psychological compatibility, all were evaluated continuously. Musk had final approval on all selections. He wanted not just the smartest, but the toughest. The crew was told to expect the worst: delays, equipment failures, injuries, possibly death. And yet, hundreds of thousands had applied. From every corner of the globe, people volunteered to leave everything behind and step onto an alien world, permanently. Musk often said that the settlers would be the authors of the most important chapter in human history. And they believed him. Every day was a test. Every system was a prototype. Every error was a lesson. And while headlines swirled and skeptics jeered, a small army of machines and minds pushed forward on a desolate planet, laying the bones of a civilization that didn't yet exist. Elon Musk knew it wouldn't happen overnight. He wasn't building a moment. He was building momentum. The kind that would carry humanity through setbacks, through failures, through fear. Because that was the only way it had ever been done. Not by waiting for certainty, but by facing the unknown and saying, let's go anyway. The day humanity first set foot on Mars wasn't like the moon landing. There was no flag planted in still air, no grainy black and white footage of a single step that echoed through history. It was quieter, slower, more calculated, and yet, in its own way, infinitely more profound. After years of preparation, months of travel, and an entire planet's worth of expectations, the first crew of humans arrived on the red planet not with dramatic fanfare but with the careful precision of people who understood the stakes. They descended not onto an empty world but onto a patch of rock and dust already touched by machines, marked by solar fields, antennae arrays, and modular structures humming with energy. The name of the mission was EOS-1. The journey had begun 7 months earlier when 4 starships launched in rapid succession from Starbase, each carrying a crew of 12. 48 individuals, scientists, engineers, doctors, and survivalists, hand-picked from tens of thousands, rigorously trained, bonded by months of simulations and psychological conditioning. Each knew the risks. Each had signed their name next to clauses that listed injury, radiation, organ failure, and death. Yet none hesitated. They weren't thrill-seekers or martyrs. They were builders. And now, after a final burn to decelerate through the thin Martian atmosphere, their ships touched down in a triangular formation near the EOS base site, the landing pads illuminated by autonomous spotlights. The tension back on Earth was unbearable. All global broadcasts, social feeds, and news channels carried the same live updates, though the feed was delayed by nearly 20 minutes. It didn't matter. When the airlock opened and the first figure emerged in a bulky white EVA suit, the world held its breath. No one heard a rousing speech. No one saw a dramatic leap. The first step was simple, a cautious, controlled move down the ramp, boots meeting regolith, hands gripping the railing. Commander Alex McKay, a former Navy pilot and aerospace engineer, turned slowly toward the wide-angle helmet cam and gave a short nod. EOS base, this is McKay. Humanity has arrived. The transmission was short, precise, and almost anticlimactic, and yet it was enough to send Earth into raptures. People wept. Strangers hugged in public parks. Schoolchildren erupted in applause. The footage played on endless loops. But on Mars, the crew wasted no time celebrating. There was too much to do. The first hours were spent conducting safety protocols, checking hull integrity, ensuring power continuity, scanning environmental data, and confirming that the autonomous infrastructure had remained stable during their approach. They wore suits at all times, oxygen tanks monitored in 5-second intervals. No one moved alone. Even within the habitat modules, every action was logged, every step backed by contingency plans. The underground tunnels, dubbed the arteries, had been partially excavated by the Thor and Athena tunneling bots months prior, but they were narrow and unstable in places. The crew's first major task was to reinforce the support beams and begin converting the chambers into living quarters. That meant sealing walls, installing radiation shielding, and setting up life support redundancy systems. Musk had insisted on a triple backup protocol: 1 failure should be survivable. 2 should be fixable. 3 should never happen. But if it did, the crew had to improvise. And they did. Over the next few weeks, a rhythm formed. Morning routine started with medical scans, bone density, muscle function, sleep quality, and cognitive tests. Every crew member had to report data to the AI medical assistant, which tracked micro-level changes in real time. Meals were precisely portioned from pre-packed nutrient reserves, supplemented with early greenhouse harvests, spinach, algae, and a hybrid bean engineered for high protein yield and low gravity. The taste wasn't ideal, but it was food grown on Mars. That alone made every bite symbolic. Outside the habitats, construction accelerated. Optimus robots laid trusses for future modules, while drone swarms mapped the terrain in 3D, identifying safe routes for future expansion. Soil chemistry tests revealed potential for in-situ resource utilization, iron, silicon, and sulfur, vital for materials fabrication. Solar arrays were upgraded, and thermal batteries installed for power during the planet's long, freezing nights. But the biggest achievement came in week 5, when the first water extraction facility began producing at scale. Liquid water, drawn, filtered, and stored on Mars, became not just a resource but a milestone. "This is the beginning of permanence," McKay said during the announcement broadcast. "Water means life, and life means legacy." Yet amid the triumphs, challenges persisted. One crew member suffered a minor decompression injury after a suit puncture during a maintenance EVA. Another experienced acute radiation sickness symptoms after a solar flare event required emergency sheltering. Though no fatalities occurred, the incidents reinforced the fragility of their existence. They were not conquerors. They were guests on a planet that did not care whether they lived or died. The psychological strain also began to show. Despite months of preparation, isolation took its toll. There were moments of tension, disagreements over scheduling, workload, even personal space. Musk had anticipated this. Embedded within each habitat was a neural feedback system developed by Neuralink, designed to monitor mood, stress levels, and cognitive decline. When readings showed dangerous trends, the system could suggest rest, light therapy, VR immersion, or scheduled communication with Earthbound psychologists. It wasn't perfect, but it helped. The settlers began to personalize their spaces. One carved a Martian chessboard from regolith samples. Another painted a mural on the habitat wall showing Earth rising above the Martian horizon. Small human gestures. Quiet acts of defiance against the void. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the public's fascination with the mission surged to unprecedented levels. Daily updates were streamed on dedicated networks. Schools held Martian morning assemblies. A child in Oregon sent a hand-drawn postcard addressed simply to "People of Mars," and it was uploaded into the Starlink communication feed and printed inside the crew's quarters. It read, "You're the bravest people ever. Please come home someday." Elon Musk watched it all from Starbase. He hadn't traveled with the crew, though he insisted that he would eventually, but he was present in every system, every metric, every contingency. His voice still crackled through private updates to the crew, offering encouragement and ideas. He knew what this was, not just survival, but symbolism. Proof that humans could stretch beyond Earth. That our story didn't have to end where it began. As the 100-day mark approached, the mission reached its first phase milestone. The launch of Beacon 1, a Martian-made communication relay constructed from in-situ materials and powered entirely by solar energy. When the signal first bounced through it, beamed back to Earth with only a 5-second lag, engineers wept. It was the first piece of infrastructure built entirely on another planet. Not landed. Built. In celebration, the crew held a short ceremony. No grand speeches. Just a few words from McKay and a shared meal of algae stew. Outside, they planted a simple steel plaque into the red dirt. It read, "To those who dreamed beyond fear." A few feet away, a young geologist named Lena Rosario collected soil samples. She looked out across the vast horizon, the orange dunes stretching endlessly beneath a pale sun, and whispered into her helmet mic, "I wonder if they'll ever find fossils here." That simple question, unanswered, unanswerable, carried the weight of a million hopes. Not just for scientific discovery, but for meaning. For connection. For proof that Mars, silent and ancient, had stories of its own waiting to be heard. For Musk, watching from Earth, this was always the point. Not just to put boots on new ground, but to expand the human narrative. To find out who we were, and who we could become, when stripped of everything familiar. The first footsteps on Mars weren't the end of a journey. They were the beginning of a new one. A whisper to the cosmos, we're here. And we're not turning back. At first, everything had moved like clockwork. The systems held. The tunnels expanded. The water supply stabilized. Each passing soul, the Martian day, seemed to validate the mission's daring premise. Humanity could survive here. Not just survive, but begin to lay down roots. And yet, beneath the surface of progress, tension simmered. It began quietly, barely noticeable at first, a skipped protocol here, a late report there. But as the weeks wore on, cracks formed not in the equipment, but in the people. Mars was not Earth. And no simulation, no training module, no psychological profile could fully prepare 48 individuals for the sheer weight of isolation, monotony, and existential pressure that defined life on a planet 140 million miles from home. The problem started in the greenhouse. A botany specialist named Aaron Lively, known for his meticulous standards, clashed repeatedly with Aiko Tanaka, the lead systems engineer, over atmospheric regulation. The CO2 levels, Lively insisted, were off by a critical margin, threatening plant respiration. Tanaka maintained that the readings fell within the established variance. Their arguments grew louder, more personal. Eventually, their feud disrupted schedule coordination between the environmental control team and the life support unit. The incident was logged, reported, mediated. But the damage had already begun. Others began showing signs of strain. Sleep cycles disrupted by artificial light inconsistencies led to cognitive fatigue. The VR landscapes, once a source of relief, began to blur reality, creating moments of confusion, even panic, when crew members temporarily forgot where they were. One technician was found weeping in the corner of a maintenance module, clutching a VR headset and whispering the names of her children back on Earth. Commander McKay initiated more frequent counseling sessions, using both the Neuralink-assisted diagnostics and regular video conferences with psychological support teams on Earth. But the time delay made real-time intervention impossible. Sometimes by the time advice arrived, the moment had passed, or worsened. The tipping point came with the EVA incident on Sol 117. Two crew members, roboticist Mateo Vargas and materials scientist Simone Klein, were assigned to install a relay antenna on the southern ridge. The terrain was uneven, and the weather had shifted suddenly, bringing high-velocity dust winds. The warning system triggered a recall, but Klein insisted they complete the installation. Vargas hesitated, citing protocol. A heated exchange followed, recorded, reviewed, and later redacted, but the decision was made to proceed. 10 minutes later, Klein lost her footing. Her right leg was pinned beneath a dislodged support beam, and her oxygen levels dropped rapidly. Vargas attempted to lift the debris but lacked the leverage. The situation required immediate return, but the delay cost Klein over 30% of her oxygen reserve. She survived, but barely. The review board on Earth classified the incident as preventable. Klein, confined to medical recovery, grew withdrawn. Vargas was reassigned. The incident polarized the crew. Some sided with Vargas, arguing that protocol existed for a reason. Others sympathized with Klein's urgency, blaming Mars's unpredictability. McKay addressed the team during a closed assembly underground. "We cannot afford division," he said, his voice tight with fatigue. "We are not just a team. We are the species out here. What happens between us echoes far beyond these tunnels." Elon Musk, watching the incident reports back on Earth, responded with a rare public message. "Adversity reveals truth," he posted. "Mars will not be kind to weakness, nor forgive ego. We must adapt, or we fail. That's the only equation." While the crew battled their internal frictions, political tensions brewed back home. The United Nations had formed a special committee, the Interplanetary Ethics Council, tasked with proposing regulations for Martian governance. Their report warned that SpaceX's control over transport, infrastructure, and AI systems created a quasi-sovereign corporate state, and demanded third-party oversight. Musk responded bluntly, "You want oversight? Build your own rockets." The statement reignited global debate. Protesters accused Musk of neocolonialism. Academics questioned whether a private entity should lead planetary settlement. Supporters argued that no government had the vision or courage to do what SpaceX had done. Still, under pressure, Musk offered a concession: EOS base would elect a rotating internal council among the settlers to handle governance, with Earth advisory presence via delayed link. It was a symbolic gesture, but for the crew, it mattered. Power, however limited, had been handed to them. But power introduced new problems. The first vote, on habitat expansion prioritization, divided the base further. One faction wanted to focus on medical and psychological facilities. Another pushed for expanded food production and research labs. The debate, though respectful, was fierce. The final vote was 26-22 in favor of research infrastructure. Those who lost the vote complied, but resentment grew. Lena Rosario, the young geologist who once gazed across the Martian horizon with awe, wrote in her private log, "We are building something new here, but we brought all our old selves with us. The pettiness, the pride. Mars hasn't changed us yet." Then came the communication blackout. A solar event, larger than predicted, triggered an electromagnetic burst that disabled long-range transmissions for 3 days. It wasn't dangerous, but it was the first time the crew had been completely cut off from Earth. No updates. No monitoring. No guidance. At first, they managed with grim efficiency. Tasks were divided. Checklists completed. But on day 2, paranoia crept in. Rumors spread that the AI systems were malfunctioning. That Earth might have experienced a catastrophe. That the blackout might not be temporary. Whispers turned into murmurs. Someone accused another of hoarding oxygen tablets. Another crew member was caught accessing restricted system settings without clearance. McKay called an emergency meeting. "Listen to me," he said, jaw clenched. "This is the test. This is what Mars does. It pushes you to the edge and then asks if you'll break. But we don't break. We hold the line." On the 3rd day, the signal returned. Earth was fine. The crew breathed again, but the fractures remained. Something had shifted. Trust, once assumed, now had to be earned again. When asked later in a recorded interview what the hardest part of the mission had been, McKay didn't mention the dust storms or radiation or EVA risks. He said one word: loneliness. Because that's what Mars really was, an ocean of silence. No wind in the trees. No laughter from the next room. Just machines humming, footsteps echoing through steel corridors, and the constant, low thrum of recycled air systems. Loneliness didn't strike like lightning. It crept, slow and quiet, wrapping itself around the soul. Elon Musk wasn't surprised. He had predicted this phase. "Technology is the easy part," he once said. "The human mind, that's the real frontier." Still, even amid tension and trial, progress continued. The first Martian-born tomato ripened in the greenhouse. A child on Earth won a science fair by designing a Martian rover inspired by the EOS mission. And deep within the tunnels, Klein, still recovering, began working on a side project, developing an interactive memorial wall, a digital canvas where every crew member could post thoughts, art, messages to Earth, or dreams of the future. It became the crew's therapy, their chapel, their town square. On Sol 138, someone posted a quote from an old astronaut: "We came in peace for all mankind." And beneath it, someone else scrawled, "Still trying." In the silence of another world, that was enough. The illusion of control on Mars was always fragile, a glass surface stretched over a chasm of uncertainty, and by Sol 151, it shattered. What began as a systems anomaly became the first truly existential crisis for the EOS crew, and it didn't come from outside, not from a meteor, or a dust storm, or a radiation flare. It came from the very heart of their engineered sanctuary, the Oxygen Reclamation Unit in Habitat C, which had been flagged by an internal diagnostic AI after a mild drop in O2 efficiency, something routine, something easily dismissed, but Mateo Vargas didn't dismiss it. After the Klein incident, he had become obsessively meticulous, tracking every fluctuation, every whisper in the machine's code, and he noticed a discrepancy in the backup scrubbers. Carbon dioxide was building at a rate that the primary filter matrix couldn't fully absorb. He alerted Tanaka, who ran a systems sweep and confirmed the same readings, anomalous but not catastrophic. They initiated a Level 2 maintenance protocol and recalibrated the molecular sieves. For 24 hours, the levels stabilized. Then they spiked. And this time, it wasn't just Habitat C. The entire life support network was registering inconsistent CO2 levels, slowly rising. The AI flagged it as a non-critical anomaly. The crew knew better. By Sol 153, the rising carbon dioxide was causing headaches, fatigue, and irritability in nearly a dozen crew members. EVA rotations were cut in half, greenhouse activity was suspended, and Commander McKay called an emergency roundtable. "This isn't drift," he said quietly. "It's a system-wide failure. If we can't stabilize O2 within 72 hours, we're not talking discomfort. We're talking neurological impairment. We're talking hypoxia. Death." The silence in the habitat was thicker than Martian soil. Klein, now back on limited duty, stood up slowly and said, "We've trained for system failures. We haven't trained for panic." McKay nodded. "Then don't panic. Fix it." Earth was notified, but the 18-minute delay each way made consultation almost useless. They had to act immediately. Tanaka and Vargas led the diagnostics team. A new theory emerged: a microbial contaminant introduced via water reclamation filters may have begun to colonize the catalytic surfaces of the scrubbers, reducing their efficiency. It was rare. Nearly impossible. But Mars had a way of turning the improbable into the inevitable. Biolab teams ran a rushed analysis. A strain of extremophile bacteria, mutated from Earth-based samples used in earlier hydroponic tests, had colonized the filters. They weren't dangerous to humans. But they were lethal to the system. The only solution: strip the filters, sterilize the chambers, and reroute the entire airflow through backup tanks designed for short-term EVA use, not full habitat support. McKay made the call. Oxygen levels dropped during the transfer. Several crew members fainted. One developed acute pulmonary edema. The medical team administered emergency treatment while the rest of the crew worked in silent, furious coordination. No one slept. No one spoke unless it was essential. They wore portable O2 masks even inside the tunnels. The AI issued alerts every hour: critical atmosphere status. Human intervention required. Musk was watching. From his command chair at Starbase, he reviewed every stream, every log, every physiological metric. When a crew member named Harlan Stokes, a logistics specialist from Kansas, collapsed during filter transport and nearly suffocated, Musk issued his own direct order through the Starlink relay. "Nobody dies. Not now. Not this close." But Mars doesn't take orders. It obeys only physics. On Sol 156, the sterilization failed. The bacteria resisted traditional UV and chemical treatment. A new protocol was drafted, riskier, but necessary. They would use direct plasma arc sterilization, a method untested in low-pressure closed habitats, one that risked damaging the internal seals. But there was no choice. Klein volunteered to run the process, alongside Tanaka. Both suited up, entered the contaminated chamber, and initiated the arc. It worked. But during shutdown, a minor explosion ruptured an internal panel. Klein was thrown backward. Her suit held. Barely. The chamber held. Barely. The emergency team got her out with seconds to spare. Her right arm was fractured, ribs bruised, O2 saturation dangerously low. But she was alive. And the chamber was clean. Over the next 48 hours, the filters were replaced with sterilized backups from storage. The oxygen levels began to rise. The CO2 dropped. The crisis had passed. Barely. But the price had been high. 3 crew members were placed under medical monitoring for long-term pulmonary impact. One had suffered a temporary cardiac arrhythmia from O2 deprivation. And everyone, every last person, was emotionally gutted. It was the breaking point. The moment the mission stopped being theoretical, stopped being symbolic, and became real in the blood and lungs and raw nerves of those who dared to live on another planet. That night, the council met in silence. No arguments. No policy proposals. Just tired eyes and a shared recognition of what they now carried. Not just the weight of Earth's expectations, but the daily gamble of survival. And yet, even in the quiet aftermath, something unexpected happened. A shift. Not toward despair, but clarity. The crew began to talk, not in briefings or logs, but in the tunnels, in corners of the greenhouse, while sharing rationed tea or tending to the regrown crops. They began to confess fears. To admit mistakes. To rebuild trust that had been eroded by stress and isolation. Rosario led a group meditation session. Vargas taught others how to read system diagnostics, just in case. McKay, once a commander first and a person second, started telling stories of his childhood. The crew laughed for the first time in weeks. The wall Klein had built, the memorial, the message board, exploded with new entries. Someone wrote, "Oxygen was never the only thing we needed." Another posted, "We died a little. Then we started living." Back on Earth, the oxygen crisis became global news. Critics demanded accountability. Supporters praised the crew's resilience. Musk remained cryptic. In one post, he wrote, "This is how it begins. With failure. With fear. And then, with fire in the soul." The crisis also changed the mission structure. New training protocols were drafted for Earth-based candidates. Psychological screening became more stringent. AI oversight systems were upgraded with new predictive models. But the biggest change was philosophical. Musk convened a private summit with top scientists and SpaceX executives and made a declaration: Mars is not a destination. It's a mirror. It reflects back the truth of who we are. If we are weak, it breaks us. If we are strong, it makes us better than we've ever been. At EOS Base, the routines resumed. New tasks emerged: terracotta insulation tests, underground farming modules, habitat expansion planning. But the rhythm was different now. Not mechanical. Not forced. Human. Purposeful. They had crossed the threshold from experiment to existence. Mars had tested them and found them wanting. And then, miraculously, allowed them to continue. Not as heroes. But as survivors. And that was enough, for now. The days after the oxygen crisis passed with an uneasy calm, like the silence that follows a storm but before the damage is fully counted, and for the crew of EOS Base, survival was no longer a theoretical concept, it was lived in the brittle fatigue of their bodies, in the haunted eyes of those who had watched teammates nearly suffocate, and in the long, sleepless stretches where breathing itself felt like both defiance and privilege. And then, as if the universe sensed the emotional vacuum left in the wake of crisis, a message arrived from Earth, not a system alert or a protocol update or a new diagnostic model, but a message from people, from home, from a world still basking under blue skies and unfiltered sunlight. It was flagged by the communications AI as priority personal broadcast and piped into the crew's shared briefing hub where, out of curiosity or habit, most of the crew had gathered for routine status updates, not expecting anything beyond charts and task lists. The screen flickered to life. No logos. No credits. Just a fade-in of Earth, real Earth, seen from orbit, brilliant and whole. Then came the voice, warm, low, familiar to anyone who had lived in the 21st century, President Angela Corbyn, addressing them not as politicians address constituents, but as one human reaching across space to another. To the crew of EO Space, she began, from all of us here on Earth, you're not alone. We see you. We hear you. And we owe you more than we can say. Her voice was calm but charged, as if holding back emotion. Behind her, the view changed to scenes from around the world, schools erupting in applause, street murals of the EO Space logo, candlelit vigils held in cities during the blackout, children dressed as astronauts pointing to the sky. Corbyn continued, when your signal went dark, the world held its breath. When it returned, and we heard you were safe, the world exhaled together. You may be the first to live on another world, but you carry all of us with you. In every heartbeat. In every breath of Martian air. The screen then cut to a compilation, thousands of clips, stitched together, of people sending their voices, their thoughts, their hopes. A boy in Nairobi holding up a model of a starship. A retired engineer in Texas showing his grandson the original Falcon 9 launch. A choir in Seoul singing a song titled, Home in the Red. An old man in Germany, once a skeptic, now choking back tears as he said, you've made this century worth it. Then came a final message, direct and unfiltered, from Elon Musk himself. No fanfare. Just him, in a simple black shirt, seated in the control room at Starbase, leaning slightly forward. You almost didn't make it, he said. And that's exactly why it matters. The easy version of this story died the day the oxygen system failed. What's left now is the real version. You're not astronauts anymore. You're settlers. You're founders. You're the first page of the next chapter of humanity. And I just want you to know, I'm proud. And I'm coming. The screen faded to black, and for a long moment, no one in the habitat spoke. Commander McKay stood slowly, walked over to the comm console, and replayed the segment of the message showing Earth, the view of the blue planet from orbit, watching it again in silence. The effect on the crew was immediate and profound. Tears flowed. Not the hysterical kind, but the quiet, involuntary kind that escape when the soul releases pressure. That message, simple, earnest, and unpolished, did what weeks of protocol couldn't. It reconnected them. The next few souls were different. Lighter. Smiles returned. People lingered longer during meals, exchanged jokes, remembered birthdays. One of the engineers wrote a folk song called Martian Hearts, and performed it on a makeshift guitar built from spare aluminum tubing. Someone uploaded it to the Earth feed. Within 48 hours, it had 10 million views and was being covered by amateur bands across 4 continents. The crew even received fan mail, digital only, of course, thousands of messages from strangers, you make us believe again. Please stay safe. You're showing us the best of us. But the most unexpected result of Earth's message was a surge of purpose. The settlers, because that's what they now called themselves, began to take on their roles with new intention. No longer simply surviving, they were building. Rosario initiated a side project to install memory beacons, small, solar-powered capsules that would store logs, audio clips, and digital artifacts around the base as both historical record and emotional archive. McKay assigned junior crew members to leadership tasks, training them not just to follow orders but to think like future commanders. Klein, still healing, returned to lab work and drafted a new AI protocol for early detection of chemical irregularities in life support systems. The wall of messages grew. Soon it wasn't just a display, it became the spiritual center of the habitat, a collage of humanity's presence stitched into Martian dust. Messages like, I told my daughter about you. She wants to be a geologist now. Or, my wife died last year. I haven't felt hope until I saw your crew survive. Even the AI assistant was updated to display selected daily messages on personal tablets, little doses of Earth delivered with morning vitals. And still, in the background, the future approached. Musk's final line, "I'm coming," wasn't empty rhetoric. Logistics systems confirmed it, another launch window was approaching, and this one wouldn't just carry cargo or upgrades. It would carry people. Reinforcements. Maybe even Musk himself. The second wave was already training, preparing to expand EOS base into EOS colony. Additional starships were under final assembly. The plan was clear: double the crew, triple the infrastructure, establish a permanent greenhouse system, and initiate surface-wide mining for construction materials. But the settlers knew what Earth did not yet fully grasp, that Mars wasn't a location to be tamed, it was a force to be endured. And any new arrivals would have to be ready not just for engineering but for existential recalibration. Still, hope grew. The idea of more people, more stories, more hands, it lifted spirits. A few even began preparing welcome protocols, designing patches, planning arrival meals, and scheduling joint training routines. The sense of being the only humans on a planet had left its mark. Sharing it, passing it forward, meant breaking the loneliness that had nearly broken them. That night, Rosario stood outside the tunnel airlock, staring into the horizon with a thermal blanket wrapped around her shoulders. She recorded a personal log. "I used to think we came here to escape Earth's problems. But now I think we came here to understand them. To see what happens when you strip everything away: money, politics, traffic, noise, and all that's left is each other. Maybe that's the real experiment." Her words were uploaded to the Earth feed. By morning, millions had watched them. And somewhere in a high school in Oregon, a student who had once felt invisible played the clip during morning announcements and declared, "I want to be on Mars someday." That was how change really happened. Not in policies or broadcasts. But in the quiet conviction of ordinary people choosing to believe again. Mars had nearly killed them. But it had also transformed them. Not just into survivors, but into symbols. And now, as they stood on the edge of a new chapter, with Earth behind them and stars ahead, they understood something most people on Earth never would: Mars doesn't give second chances. But if you fight for them, if you bleed and break and still stand, Mars will let you begin again. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The moment Elon Musk stepped off the Dragon Star shuttle onto the Martian soil, the entire crew held their breath, the silence more profound than any words could be. After months of anticipation, his arrival wasn't just a logistical event, it was a seismic shift in the mission's trajectory, the embodiment of hope and uncertainty all wrapped into one human figure wearing a space suit streaked with dust and determination. The crew watched the feed from inside the habitat, eyes glued to every flicker of static and signal, as the hatch hissed open and Elon emerged, taller, leaner, but unmistakably himself, with that characteristic quiet confidence that had driven him to reshape the boundaries of technology and space exploration. His first words, transmitted live, were simple yet charged with meaning: "I'm here. We're going to make this work." It wasn't a promise. It was a challenge. Commander McKay immediately organized a welcome briefing, gathering the crew in the main operations room, the walls adorned with screens showing telemetry, habitat status, and the infamous message wall from Earth. Elon's presence was electrifying. He listened intently as the crew recounted the oxygen crisis, the near disasters, and the slow but steady progress toward stabilizing the base and expanding the colony's footprint. Klein, her arms still in a brace, was first to speak about the new AI protocols she had designed to prevent future life support failures, her voice steady despite exhaustion. Elon nodded thoughtfully, asking pointed questions about system redundancies, the microbial contaminant, and whether the biofilters could be replaced with synthetic alternatives. Vargas detailed the challenges of mining regolith for water extraction, highlighting the unpredictable variability in mineral deposits and how the Martian dust played havoc with machinery. Elon's mind raced. He envisioned not just fixing problems but redesigning systems from the ground up with the lessons learned baked into every component. He shared concepts for next-gen starships with autonomous repair drones and modular habitats that could self-assemble using AI-guided robotics. The crew felt the air shift from survival mode to innovation mode. Elon's arrival was more than a morale boost, it was a catalyst for evolution. Over the next few sols, Elon moved through the habitat like a whirlwind, hands-on and hands dirty, reviewing every system with the precision of an engineer and the intuition of a visionary. He held late-night strategy sessions in the greenhouse, talking with Rosario about the possibilities of genetically engineered plants that could thrive in Martian soil and convert carbon dioxide more efficiently, even suggesting trials with synthetic photosynthesis. He worked side by side with Tanaka on power grid optimizations, discussing solar array expansions and battery storage innovations that could withstand dust storms. But perhaps the most important contribution Elon made was on the human front. He gathered the crew for informal talks, often ending with the question, "What scares you most about Mars?" These sessions peeled back layers of isolation and fear, building a rare openness in a group that had been hardened by months of near-death experiences. When Harlan Stokes, the logistics specialist who had nearly died during the oxygen crisis, admitted his fear of failure and letting everyone down, Elon simply said, "Fear means you care. Use it." In a small, unguarded moment, Elon confided his own doubts, "I've spent my life chasing impossible goals. Sometimes it feels like I'm running ahead of the story. Mars is where everything I've built can either make sense or shatter." His vulnerability forged a new kind of bond, breaking the myth of untouchable genius and replacing it with something raw and real. The crew responded in kind, sharing their hopes for the future, a community that could not only survive but thrive on Mars, new generations of explorers raised under red skies, a legacy of humanity expanding beyond Earth's fragile cradle. Elon's arrival also accelerated mission plans. The Starship upgrades under construction back on Earth were reprioritized, focusing on rapid deployment of additional habitat modules, life support backups, and advanced robotics to assist in construction and maintenance. The EOS base began preparing for its first expansion phase, codenamed New Dawn, a modular growth that would nearly double the living quarters and introduce an underground water recycling center designed by Klein's team. But the progress came with new challenges. Mars was relentless. Within a week of Elon's arrival, a major dust storm swept across the plains near EOS base, blackening the sky for 3 sols, reducing solar output by 75% and threatening to cripple power systems. The crew scrambled to protect solar panels with new dust shield Elon had insisted on installing immediately upon arrival. During the storm, Elon led emergency power rerouting, coordinating teams through the noise and static of compromised comms, proving his ability to command under pressure, not just from Earth but on the ground where stakes were immediate and unforgiving. When the storm passed, damage assessments revealed several solar arrays offline and one habitat airlock seal compromised. Repairs took days, but the crisis reinforced the fragile nature of their existence and the brutal environment they were attempting to tame. Yet each challenge also hardened resolve. Elon spent nights in the greenhouse, watching seedlings sprout under artificial lights, talking about sustainability and the need for Mars to become self-sufficient. "We're not just planting crops," he said quietly. "We're planting hope." Klein, meanwhile, worked on integrating new AI diagnostics Elon had brought with him, complex machine learning models capable of predicting system failures hours or even days before they occurred. These predictive algorithms promised to revolutionize how the crew managed everything from oxygen levels to power distribution. The crew's confidence grew, but so did the pressure. Elon's presence brought scrutiny from Earth. Media outlets demanded exclusive interviews and real-time updates, turning EOS base into a global spectacle. The crew, once isolated, now felt the gaze of billions watching their every move. This added a new layer of stress, but Elon managed communications with a deft hand, balancing transparency with protecting operational security and crew privacy. The next milestone was the arrival of the second wave of colonists. Elon had personally overseen the selection and training of the new crew, prioritizing diversity and skill sets that would expand the colony's capabilities: geologists, medical experts, botanists, engineers, and even artists. Their arrival would transform Eos Base from a fragile outpost to a burgeoning settlement. When the starship carrying the new colonists touched down on Martian soil, the original crew lined the landing zone, hearts pounding. Elon, helmet off now, face streaked with red dust and sweat, was the first to greet the newcomers. He embraced the first arrivals, not as a distant figurehead, but as one of them. A fellow pioneer on the front lines of humanity's boldest endeavor. The newcomers brought fresh energy and fresh challenges. Integrating two crews, each with their own dynamics and histories, tested leadership and camaraderie. But Elon's presence and vision created a shared purpose that smoothed friction and inspired cooperation. He often reminded them, "We're not just surviving here. We're building a future where humanity belongs." One evening, after a long day of construction and system checks, Elon gathered everyone for an informal talk beneath the habitat's dome, now clear enough to reveal a glittering Martian night sky. He pointed upward. "Out there," he said, "is the unknown. The challenge. The adventure. Every step we take, every problem we solve, we're redefining what it means to be human." His words echoed in the silence. Klein whispered to Vargas, "I think we've finally crossed the line. From explorers to settlers." And in that moment, surrounded by red dust and stars, hope was no longer just a fragile ember. It was a blazing fire. The journey was far from over. Mars was a relentless teacher, and the crew had learned that every victory came with a price. But with Elon Musk standing among them, not as a distant visionary, but as a comrade, they were ready to face whatever came next. Because now, they knew, the world wasn't just watching. They were part of the story. The story of Mars. The story of humanity's next great leap. The arrival of the second wave had brought renewed vigor to Eos Base, but it also exposed just how little they truly understood about the Martian landscape beneath their feet. Elon had pushed for an expansion of geological surveys, and with the new crew's geologists and drilling experts, they began to peel back the layers of Mars like archaeologists uncovering ancient ruins. What they found challenged every assumption. It started with anomalies in the seismic data, unexplained tremors beneath the base that didn't fit the known patterns of Mars quakes or thermal contractions. At first, they assumed sensor errors, but as days passed, the readings grew more frequent and intense, revealing a complex network of underground caverns and what looked like vast deposits of ice and mineral formations previously undetected. Dr. Lena Harper, the lead geologist, spearheaded the subterranean scans using ground-penetrating radar and robotic probes, her excitement palpable despite the crew's exhaustion. "This isn't just rock and dust," she said during a briefing. "We're looking at potential aquifers, maybe even pockets of liquid water, or something else. Something unexpected." The idea that liquid water could exist beneath the Martian surface was tantalizing and terrifying. Water meant life, or at least the potential for it. It also meant they might have stumbled on something that could threaten their fragile ecosystem or reveal secrets not meant to be uncovered. Elon was the first to agree that they needed to investigate carefully but quickly, pushing for manned exploratory missions into the caves once robotic scouts mapped safe routes. A small team was assembled. Harper, Klein, Vargas, and Elon himself volunteered for the initial descent. The entry point was a narrow fissure in the rocky outcrop near the base, camouflaged by shifting dust but revealing a dark, yawning maw that seemed to breathe cold air. The atmosphere inside the cavern was eerily quiet, the only sound their boots crunching on crushed rock and the faint hum of life support systems in their suits. As they moved deeper, beams from their helmet lights pierced the blackness, revealing walls slick with mineral deposits that glistened like frozen tears. Sensors confirmed pockets of moisture, and deeper still, the air temperature rose slightly, hinting at geothermal activity. The deeper they went, the more the cave system opened into vast chambers, some large enough to house a city. Elon's voice, calm but tinged with awe, crackled over the comms. This changes everything. We're not just settling Mars. We're stepping into a world that's alive in ways we never imagined. Then came the discovery that sent shockwaves through the crew: fossilized microbial mats embedded in the cave walls, ancient biosignatures dating back millions of years. The proof of past life on Mars. The implications were staggering. If life had existed here, it could have adapted to environments underground, protected from radiation and harsh surface conditions. It raised hopes for discovering extant life or understanding Mars' climate history. But amid the excitement, a subtle unease crept in. During one survey, Klein detected unusual radiation spikes, not from cosmic sources but from something artificial, an energy signature pulsing faintly beneath layers of rock. Elon theorized it could be remnants of past missions or unknown natural phenomena but urged extreme caution. The cave system also showed signs of instability. Minor collapses occurred during the descent, forcing the team to retreat earlier than planned. Back at the base, the news sparked debate. Some crew members worried about the risks of further exploration, fearing that the caves might harbor unseen dangers. Others saw it as the key to Martian survival, a source of water and shelter from storms. Elon remained pragmatic. Mars is a puzzle, he said during a tense meeting. We have to understand the pieces before we build. But we can't stop moving forward. As the days passed, robotic drones equipped with environmental sensors and mapping tools were dispatched to explore deeper tunnels, sending back breathtaking images and data. Among the findings were crystalline formations that shimmered with unknown properties and layers of sediment that hinted at ancient flood events. Meanwhile, underground microbial activity was detected by Klein's bioprobes, sparking excitement about the possibility of living organisms still eking out an existence in isolated niches. This revelation prompted a shift in the mission's priorities. The scientific team petitioned for a protected zone around the caves to prevent contamination and began drafting protocols for biosecurity, measures designed to keep Earth microbes from interfering with Martian ecosystems and vice versa. Elon supported these efforts, emphasizing the importance of responsible exploration. Yet, despite the optimism, the cave system held secrets not immediately apparent. Late one night, Vargas reported unusual readings on his instruments, intermittent electromagnetic pulses that didn't align with any known natural phenomenon. The pulses seemed to follow a pattern, almost like a signal, but no one could decode it. Elon ordered a deep analysis, involving AI pattern recognition algorithms, but the origin remained a mystery. The crew speculated wildly: was it a quirk of the Martian geology, a signal from some undiscovered natural process, or something else entirely? Meanwhile, the base's expanded greenhouse complex flourished, nourished by water extracted from subterranean ice and filtered through newly developed bioreactors. The success of the crops bolstered the settlers' morale, a tangible sign that Mars could sustain life beyond human bodies. As they worked, the crew's emotional landscape also shifted. The discovery of past life, the alien caves, and the strange signals beneath their feet stirred both wonder and anxiety. Personal journals and logs revealed an undercurrent of philosophical questioning. What did it mean for humanity to colonize a planet that once harbored life? Were they intruders or caretakers? Could they coexist with a legacy that wasn't theirs? Elon addressed these questions in a rare broadcast to Earth and the crew: we came to Mars seeking a new beginning. But this planet has its own history, its own mysteries. Our mission is not just survival. It's stewardship. To explore with respect, to learn without destroying. The crew embraced this new ethos, weaving it into daily routines and mission goals. EOS Base began developing an ethics charter, emphasizing conservation, scientific integrity, and cultural humility. The arrival of new technology, autonomous mining rigs, advanced life support modules, and AI-driven environmental monitoring, was tempered by this guiding philosophy. Yet, the caves kept calling. Harper's team discovered a particularly large chamber filled with hexagonal basalt columns resembling giant stone pillars, an otherworldly cathedral beneath the surface. Embedded within were fossils and mineral layers that suggested rapid climate shifts, a timeline of Mars' transformation from a wetter world to its current desolation. The chamber's air was warmer, the soil rich in trace elements, making it a candidate site for a future habitat expansion or scientific outpost. But when Elon led a second manned mission into the chamber, they found something unexpected: artifacts, not natural formations or geological curiosities, but unmistakably artificial objects, small metallic fragments with etched symbols, remnants of a technology not known to humanity. The discovery stunned everyone. How could this be? Were they remnants of a lost human mission, a probe from another agency, or something else? Elon's voice was steady but filled with gravity as he relayed the finding to Earth, sparking intense debate and speculation worldwide. The crew named the site the Vault. As they carefully collected samples and documented every detail, the psychological weight of the discovery settled in. For some, it confirmed that Mars had been touched before, possibly by other explorers or even ancient visitors. For others, it was a haunting reminder of the unknown dangers lurking beneath the planet's surface. Commander McKay organized debriefings and counseling sessions to help the crew process the revelation. The fragile mental health of the team was a constant concern, especially after months of isolation and stress. Yet, even in the face of uncertainty, the crew knew that the secrets beneath the surface held the key to their future. Every question answered unearthed new mysteries. And Mars, relentless and enigmatic, reminded them that colonization was more than building habitats or extracting resources, it was an encounter with the alien, the ancient, and the unexplained. The settlers stood at a crossroads. The caves beneath Eos Base beckoned with promise and peril, a hidden chapter in the story of Mars yet to be written. Elon Musk's vision was evolving, no longer just about planting flags and growing crops, but about unraveling the deep-time narrative of a world that was both stranger and more alive than anyone had dared imagine. The future would demand courage, humility, and a willingness to confront not only the harshness of Mars but the shadows it cast on humanity's own ambitions. The journey into the depths had begun, and with it, the true test of their mission. The discovery of the mysterious artifacts in the vault sent ripples through the crew at Eos Base, stirring excitement but also sowing seeds of doubt and tension that would grow in the coming weeks. Elon Musk's visionary presence, once a unifying force, now had to contend with the mounting psychological strain that comes from confronting the unknown on a planet millions of miles from home. The initial thrill of discovery was soon tempered by questions that no one had answers for. Who or what had left these artifacts? Were they the remnants of a previous human mission lost to history, or something far more alien and unfathomable? The implications were staggering and unnerved many. In the cramped habitat corridors, hushed conversations buzzed with speculation. Some crew members whispered about conspiracy theories, believing Earth agencies had hidden missions or secret agendas. Others feared that the artifacts were warnings, signs that Mars was not a passive landscape but a living system guarding its secrets fiercely. Tensions surfaced in unexpected ways. Trust, once solidified by shared hardship, began to fray under the weight of uncertainty. Klein and Vargas clashed over whether the artifacts should be studied openly or kept secret until more was known. Klein argued for transparency, fearing that secrecy would breed paranoia and undermine morale. Vargas, more pragmatic and cautious, warned that premature revelations could jeopardize the mission and invite unwanted interference from Earth. Elon found himself mediating these disputes, drawing on his experience managing high-stakes projects and public scrutiny. "We need facts, not fear," he insisted during a rare crew meeting. "But we also need to be honest about what we don't know. Mars is not a puzzle we'll solve overnight." The psychological toll manifested most acutely in the crew's sleep patterns and stress levels. Commander McKay, always attuned to her team's well-being, noticed signs of anxiety and withdrawal. She implemented regular mental health check-ins, encouraging journaling and group discussions to vent frustrations and fears. Elon, too, shared his own moments of vulnerability in private conversations, revealing that the pressure of leadership weighed heavily on him. "Every decision feels like balancing on a knife's edge," he confessed one evening to Klein. If we misstep here, the consequences won't just be scientific, they'll be human. The base's AI systems, upgraded with Klein's latest code, began to detect subtle changes in crew behavior, elevated heart rates, erratic communication patterns, even moments of cognitive fog. These readings became a new variable in mission planning, as commanders sought to balance operational demands with the mental health needs of their team. Amid this internal turbulence, the mission's scientific focus sharpened on understanding the artifacts. Harper's geological team collaborated with Klein's bioinformatics experts, running complex analyses to determine the artifact's composition and origin. The fragments contained rare metals and alloys not found naturally on Mars, etched with symbols that defied known linguistic patterns. Elon pushed for involvement from Earth's top linguists and cryptographers, hoping that AI-driven decryption tools could unlock the message, or warning, embedded in the artifacts. The debate extended beyond science. Ethical questions surged to the forefront. If these artifacts were relics of an ancient civilization, did humanity have the right to disturb or remove them? Could their presence indicate that Mars was a sacred site, or that the planet's history was intertwined with forms of life that challenged Earth-centric notions of biology and culture? The crew grappled with their roles as explorers or invaders. Elon addressed this in a live broadcast to Earth and the entire Mars network: "We are not conquerors. We are students of the cosmos. Our mission must honor the past as we build the future." Meanwhile, external pressures mounted. News of the artifact discovery leaked to the media, igniting global fascination and controversy. Governments and private companies debated the legal ownership of Martian finds, raising thorny issues about space law and sovereignty. Earth's political landscape became a tangled web of competing interests, with some factions demanding immediate exploitation of Mars resources and others calling for protective treaties akin to UNESCO World Heritage designations. Back on Mars, the crew felt the weight of these conflicts from afar. Communications from Earth became more frequent, mixing encouragement with bureaucratic red tape. Elon's role expanded beyond technical leadership to diplomatic ambassador, navigating political minefields while keeping the mission on track. Yet, despite these distractions, the Martian environment itself remained unforgiving. New challenges arose from the planet's unpredictable weather and geological activity. Another dust storm swept across the plains, less severe than the previous one but enough to disrupt solar power and delay critical repairs. The ground beneath Eos base shifted subtly during a minor tremor, forcing structural engineers to reassess habitat stability and reinforce foundations. These reminders of Mars' hostility kept the crew grounded, their sense of vulnerability sharpened by the very artifacts that promised new horizons. Personal relationships also strained under the relentless pressure. The close-knit bonds that had formed in isolation now showed cracks. Arguments flared over resource allocation, differing opinions on exploration priorities, and the psychological toll of living under constant threat. Rosario and Tanaka, once a symbol of hope and resilience, found themselves drifting apart as stress and fatigue eroded their connection. Klein struggled to maintain focus on her AI projects while managing her own doubts about the mission's direction. Even Elon faced moments of isolation, the burden of expectation a lonely summit. Yet, amid these shadows, moments of light emerged. Small victories, a successful crop harvest, a breakthrough in decoding artifact symbols, a repaired habitat system, rekindled hope and reminded the crew of their shared purpose. Elon championed these wins, using them to bolster morale and reinforce the narrative that Mars was not a battleground but a laboratory for human ingenuity and spirit. He introduced new traditions, such as weekly gatherings under the Habitat Dome where crew members shared stories, music, and reflections, fostering a sense of community and resilience. The AI, affectionately nicknamed Sagan after the famed astronomer, became a trusted companion and counselor, offering data-driven insights alongside empathetic responses, helping crew members manage stress and maintain perspective. The settlers of Eos base faced the stark reality that their mission was evolving into something more complex and profound than any of them had imagined. The artifacts beneath their feet were not just relics, they were catalysts, forcing humanity to confront questions about identity, purpose, and the meaning of exploration in an alien world. Elon Musk, once the unshakable visionary, now wrestled with the shadows of doubt alongside his crew, realizing that the greatest challenge of all was not conquering Mars, but understanding it, and themselves, on a deeper level. The future was uncertain, the path ahead shadowed by mystery and risk, but also illuminated by the enduring human drive to seek, to know, and to survive. The journey was far from over, and the settlers were ready to face whatever darkness lay ahead. Just when the crew of EOS Base thought they had begun to grasp the mysteries hidden beneath the Martian surface, an entirely new enigma emerged, one that would test their resolve, their technology, and the very nature of their mission. It started as a faint anomaly picked up by the base's long-range communications array during a routine check. Klein was the first to notice it, a rhythmic pattern in the background noise, almost like a heartbeat pulsing through the static. At first, it was dismissed as interference, the inevitable cosmic noise that came with working millions of miles from Earth. But as the days passed, the signal grew clearer, more structured, and distinctly artificial. Elon was alerted immediately. His reaction was a mixture of excitement and caution. "If this is what we think it is," he said during an emergency briefing, "it could change everything." The entire crew gathered in the communications hub, the hum of equipment filling the air as Klein and her team worked feverishly to isolate and decode the transmission. The signal's pattern was unlike anything recorded before. It wasn't random, nor was it a simple repeating message. Instead, it appeared to be a complex code, layered with multiple frequencies and temporal shifts. Harper theorized that the signal could be originating from deep within the cave system, the same vault where the artifacts had been found, suggesting a possible connection between the relics and this new cosmic mystery. The prospect was electrifying and terrifying. Were they being contacted by another intelligence? Was Mars itself communicating? Or was this an entirely new kind of natural phenomenon beyond human comprehension? The crew's emotions fluctuated between awe and apprehension. Sleep became fitful, minds racing with possibilities. Elon insisted on maintaining a level head. "We're explorers, not jumpers to conclusions. Let's gather data before we speculate." Klein's AI, Sagan, was tasked with advanced signal analysis. Using machine learning algorithms and neural networks, it began parsing the layers of the transmission, searching for recognizable patterns or encoded information. Days turned into nights with no sleep as the team chased the puzzle, the hum of computers and whispered theories filling the air. Meanwhile, the rest of the crew focused on their routines, though unease hung thick in the habitat. The signal was a reminder that Mars held secrets deeper and darker than the rocky surface suggested. Outside, the planet's harsh environment continued its silent watch, dust storms swirling in the distance, the red sun dipping below the horizon, casting long shadows over the base. Then, the breakthrough came. Sagan announced a partial decryption. The signal was a repeating sequence of prime numbers interlaced with bursts of what appeared to be a structured language, mathematical in nature, but with elements that suggested intention and perhaps even emotion. Elon's mind raced. Prime numbers had long been considered a universal language in attempts to communicate with extraterrestrial intelligence, but this went further. There was complexity, nuance. It was a message, not just a beacon. The implications were staggering. If this was a transmission from an intelligent source, whether alien or ancient Martian, it meant humanity was not alone, and that Mars was more than a barren outpost, it was a crossroads of cosmic significance. As the crew wrestled with the ramifications, a new wave of tension swept the base. Factions formed, some advocating for aggressive responses, sending back messages in kind, others urging caution, fearing that provoking an unknown intelligence could be dangerous. Elon convened a council to discuss the ethical and strategic paths forward. "We have to ask ourselves," he said solemnly, "what kind of ambassadors we want to be. This is not just about survival. It's about representing all of humanity in a universe that may be watching." The council agreed on a protocol. They would send a carefully crafted reply using a combination of mathematical concepts, scientific data about Earth and Mars, and messages of peace and curiosity. Klein led the message design, consulting with Earth-based experts via delayed communications. The signal was transmitted during a window of optimal alignment, beaming into the void with a hope that it would be received and understood. Days passed with agonizing silence. The crew watched the stars, listening intently for any response. Then, a subtle change occurred in the original signal. It shifted in rhythm, incorporating a sequence that matched the prime numbers sent back, an unmistakable acknowledgement. The realization sent a ripple of exhilaration through EO space. They were engaged in a cosmic dialogue, a conversation across light years and time. But with excitement came caution. Harper reminded the team that while this was historic, it also raised the stakes dramatically. The source of the signal could be close, or unimaginably distant. They had no idea of the sender's intentions or capabilities. Every crew member felt the gravity of the moment. The signal became a catalyst for reflection on what it meant to be human, to reach out into the unknown and make contact. The base's public broadcasts to Earth were filled with hope and philosophical musings, but also calls for unity and preparedness. Elon took time to write a message for future explorers, capturing the ethos that had guided them through this unprecedented chapter. In reaching for the stars, we found not only others but ourselves. Mars is our new home, but it is also our mirror, reflecting the depths of human courage, curiosity, and responsibility. As they waited for more signals, the crew deepened their exploration of the caves, hoping to find physical evidence linked to the transmissions. The artifacts in the vault were examined again, now with the knowledge that they might be part of a communication network or ancient technology designed to interact across space. New discoveries came to light, delicate crystalline structures that acted as resonators, amplifying signals in ways that suggested deliberate engineering. These findings bolstered the theory that Mars had once been inhabited by a civilization advanced enough to manipulate their environment on a grand scale. But as the signal persisted, its layers peeled back to reveal unexpected complexity. Embedded within the mathematical sequences were patterns resembling emotional states, expressions of curiosity, warning, and even sorrow. The crew debated whether this meant the sender was alive, sentient, or a relic of a long-gone society encoding memories in electromagnetic pulses. The emotional resonance of the message struck deeply. It humanized the unknown, creating a bridge of empathy across the void. For the first time, the crew felt less like conquerors and more like participants in an interstellar story much larger than themselves. Yet, shadows lingered. What had happened to the sender? Were they watching, waiting, or fading away? Could they return? These questions haunted the quiet moments between shifts. Elon's leadership evolved to encompass not only technical expertise but profound philosophical stewardship. He encouraged open dialogue, meditation, and moments of silence, fostering a culture that embraced uncertainty with dignity. The base became a microcosm of humanity's hopes and fears, a beacon of light in a vast, mysterious cosmos. The signal continued to pulse, an invitation, a question, a challenge. Mars was no longer just a destination, it was a meeting place between worlds, between past and future, between the known and the unknowable. The settlers stood ready, united by purpose and wonder, on the brink of a new era where every heartbeat of the signal echoed their own. A reminder that in the darkest depths of space, connection was still possible, and life, in all its forms, could find a way. As the mysterious signal continued to pulse through the communication arrays of EO space, a subtle but unmistakable fissure began to grow among the crew. What started as minor disagreements over protocol soon deepened into fundamental clashes of ideology about the mission's purpose, priorities, and the nature of the unknown they were now confronting. The initial euphoria of contact was giving way to something more complicated: fear, suspicion, and a struggle for control. Elon Musk, whose visionary leadership had propelled the mission thus far, found himself at the center of a growing storm. His role evolved from that of innovator and explorer to mediator and crisis manager. The pressure to unify the crew while navigating unprecedented challenges was immense. The divide manifested most clearly in the formation of two factions. On one side were the pragmatists, led by Vargas and Harper, who emphasized scientific caution and survival above all else. They advocated for strict protocols, limited interaction with the signal, and a focus on securing Mars as a viable outpost for humanity. Their stance was grounded in the belief that Mars' harsh environment and unknown dangers required discipline and restraint. On the other side were the visionaries, inspired by Elon and Klein, who saw the signal as an invitation to expand humanity's horizons beyond mere survival. They pushed for deeper engagement with the message, more daring exploration of the cave systems, and a broader mission to understand Mars as a living entity with secrets that could reshape humanity's future. This group embraced risk as a necessary step toward progress. The tension between these camps was palpable. Meetings grew heated, with debates that oscillated between passionate pleas and quiet mistrust. Commander McKay worked tirelessly to maintain order and morale, but even she acknowledged the growing strain on the crew's cohesion. The divide seeped into daily life. Conversations in the habitat corridors carried an edge, eyes flicked with suspicion, and alliances shifted unpredictably. The small community that had bonded through shared hardship was fracturing under the weight of existential questions. Elon felt the personal toll acutely. He confided in Klein during a rare moment of solitude, "I never imagined the unknown would tear us apart like this. We came here to unite humanity, but now we're divided on the very ground we stand on." Klein responded with quiet determination, "It's human nature to fear what we don't understand. Our job is to guide them through the darkness, not away from it." Meanwhile, external factors intensified the internal conflict. Communications from Earth brought conflicting messages. Some agencies urged caution, worried about potential risks of provoking unknown forces. Others saw the signal as an opportunity to claim technological and geopolitical advantage. Funding debates, political pressure, and public opinion added layers of complexity to an already fraught situation. The crew became a microcosm of Earth's struggles, reflecting its divisions and aspirations in a remote corner of the solar system. Amid this turmoil, a critical event pushed the divide from simmering tension to outright crisis. During a routine expedition into the cave system, a small team led by Harper uncovered a previously hidden chamber containing more advanced artifacts, devices that seemed to resonate with the ongoing signal. This discovery was hailed as a breakthrough by the visionaries, who saw it as proof that Mars was a nexus of intelligence and technology waiting to be unlocked. But the pragmatists viewed it as a dangerous escalation. Harper's team had inadvertently triggered a spike in the signal's intensity, causing unexplained interference with the base's systems. Power fluctuations, data corruption, and communication blackouts followed, threatening the safety of the entire settlement. The incident sparked fierce accusations. Vargas accused the visionaries of recklessness and jeopardizing the mission for the sake of curiosity. Klein and Elon defended the exploratory spirit, arguing that progress demanded risk and that retreating into fear would doom humanity to stagnation. The arguments spilled into personal confrontations. Long-standing friendships frayed, trust eroded, and the psychological strain manifested in exhaustion, irritability, and withdrawal. Commander McKay faced a dilemma. Her priority was the crew's safety, but she also recognized that suppressing the visionaries' drive would stifle the very innovation that had brought them so far. She initiated a mediated dialogue, urging openness and empathy. "We must remember," she said, "that we are one team with one goal, survival and discovery. Our strength lies in our diversity, not our division." The dialogue helped ease tensions but did not resolve them. The crew remained deeply polarized, each side convinced of its path. Elon sought to bridge the gap through a bold proposal, a joint mission combining the pragmatists' caution with the visionaries' ambition. The plan was to send a mixed team deep into the cave system to investigate the newly discovered chamber, equipped with enhanced safety measures and real-time monitoring. It was a gamble, but a necessary step toward reconciliation and progress. The mission was set, and preparations began amid a charged atmosphere. Crew members volunteered with a mix of enthusiasm and apprehension. The day of departure was marked by a solemn ceremony, reflecting the gravity of the task. As the exploration team descended into the labyrinthine caves, the rest of the crew waited anxiously, the base enveloped in an eerie silence broken only by the hum of life support systems and distant echoes from the Martian surface. Inside the caves, the explorers encountered breathtaking sights, glowing mineral veins, crystalline formations that shimmered like stardust, and ancient murals etched into the walls. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation and a sense of stepping into history. The advanced devices pulsed gently, their energy patterns synchronized with the signal. The team carefully collected data and samples, mindful of the delicate balance between curiosity and caution. Suddenly, the devices activated in a synchronized burst, illuminating the chamber in radiant light and triggering a surge in the signal that reverberated through the base. The moment was awe-inspiring but also unsettling. The signal now carried layers of information so complex that Sagan struggled to interpret it fully. It seemed to contain not only data but emotions, memories, warnings, and perhaps even pleas. The crew realized they were in the presence of a consciousness far beyond their previous understanding, one that challenged human perceptions of life and intelligence. The implications deepened the divide. The pragmatists called for immediate withdrawal and containment to prevent further risks. The visionaries urged engagement and dialogue, believing that this was a historic opportunity to learn and evolve. Elon once again found himself in the crucible of leadership, balancing conflicting demands with limited resources and time. In the quiet moments that followed, he reflected on the nature of humanity's journey, how discovery often came with uncertainty and conflict, but also hope and growth. He understood that the divide was not merely a schism within the crew but a reflection of the broader human condition, the tension between fear and courage, caution and exploration, preservation and transformation. The settlers of Eos Base stood at a crossroads. The signal pulsed on, a reminder of the unknown that lay ahead. The divide remained, but so did the possibility of unity through understanding and shared purpose. The mission to Mars was no longer just a quest for survival or conquest, it had become a profound journey into the heart of what it meant to be human in a universe filled with mystery and wonder. The future was uncertain, the path fraught with challenges, but the crew was resolved to face it together, embracing both the light and shadow of their new home. The atmosphere inside Eos Base was thick with anticipation as the explorers prepared to delve deeper into the mysteries unearthed within the Martian caves. The recent discoveries and ongoing signals had shifted their perception of Mars from a desolate outpost to a living archive of an ancient and possibly still active intelligence. Elon Musk stood at the helm, not just as a leader but as a symbol of humanity's boundless curiosity and tenacity. The awakening was not merely about technology or science, it was a profound shift in consciousness that rippled through every member of the crew, altering how they saw themselves, their mission, and the universe. As the expedition team equipped themselves with enhanced sensors and protective gear, a sense of solemn duty hung over them. This was no longer exploration for exploration's sake. It was a journey into the heart of something greater, a moment that could redefine humanity's place in the cosmos. Klein oversaw the integration of Sagan's new algorithms designed to interpret the increasingly complex signal. The AI now processed not only data but emotional nuances embedded in the transmissions, providing insights that were at times haunting and deeply moving. Harper, the scientific lead, had also shifted her approach. Where she once sought purely empirical evidence, she now allowed room for wonder and interpretation, recognizing that the signal's complexity defied conventional explanation. As the team descended into the newly discovered chamber, the walls seemed to hum with an otherworldly energy. Crystalline formations glowed softly, casting kaleidoscopic patterns of light that danced like living memories on the rocky surfaces. The atmosphere was charged with a palpable sense of awakening, like stepping into the cradle of a forgotten consciousness reaching out through time and space. The explorers moved carefully, documenting every detail. Suddenly, the devices they carried began to resonate with increasing intensity, responding to unseen stimuli deep within the chamber. The signal's rhythm shifted, no longer a distant whisper but a clear communication that filled the air with a presence both awe-inspiring and unsettling. Klein's voice broke the silence, trembling with emotion, "It's like the planet itself is speaking through these artifacts. We're not just witnessing history, we're part of it." Elon felt a profound connection, as if the boundaries between human and Martian, past and present, were dissolving. The signal unveiled a tapestry of memories. Images of a civilization that had thrived and struggled, loved and lost, on a world that once teemed with life. The crew saw visions of great cities, technological marvels, and then decline in silence. Yet, embedded within was a message of hope, a plea for understanding, a desire to reach beyond the void and share knowledge. This awakening sparked a transformation in the crew. Doubts and divisions began to ease as they recognized their shared humanity reflected in the echoes of an ancient past. The pragmatists and visionaries found common ground in the realization that their mission transcended survival, it was about connection, empathy, and the pursuit of meaning. As they delved further into the cave, they uncovered a chamber unlike any before. It housed a crystalline structure that emitted waves of light and sound, a kind of living archive storing the collective consciousness of Mars' ancient inhabitants. The crew realized this was the source of the signal. A vast repository of knowledge and emotion encoded in patterns beyond human language. Interacting with the structure required new forms of communication. Klein developed a method using light pulses and harmonic frequencies to interface with the archive, opening a dialogue that revealed astonishing insights into Martian history, science, and philosophy. The experience was both exhilarating and humbling. The crew learned about Mars' past climate, its catastrophic environmental changes, and the attempts of its inhabitants to preserve their legacy. They saw the parallels with Earth's own challenges, a mirror held up to humanity's future. Elon spoke during a broadcast to Earth, his voice filled with reverence and hope. We are not alone in facing uncertainty. Mars teaches us resilience and the importance of stewardship. This awakening is a call to unite, to cherish life in all its forms. The interaction also brought new challenges. The emotional weight of the archive was intense, at times overwhelming. Crew members experienced vivid dreams, moments of profound insight, and even episodes of emotional distress as the memories and emotions of an extinct civilization imprinted on their consciousness. Klein emphasized the need for psychological support and reflection, transforming EO space into a space not only for scientific exploration but for healing and understanding. As the crew integrated the knowledge from the archive, they discovered technologies and philosophies that could revolutionize life on Mars and Earth alike. Energy systems based on sustainable principles, social structures emphasizing cooperation over competition, and a deep spiritual connection to the cosmos, all offered pathways for humanity's evolution. The awakening also challenged Elon personally. He confronted his own fears and aspirations, grappling with the immense responsibility of leadership in a moment of profound transformation. Conversations with Klein and McKay became spaces of candid reflection, exploring themes of legacy, sacrifice, and hope. The crew began to embody a new ethos, one that embraced uncertainty as a source of growth, division as a catalyst for dialogue, and the unknown as a space for possibility. Yet, the awakening was not without its shadows. Questions lingered about the fate of the Martian civilization. What had caused their extinction? Were there dangers still lurking beneath the surface? The crew remained vigilant, balancing their thirst for knowledge with respect for the unknown. The signal continued to pulse, no longer a mysterious intrusion but a beacon of awakening that connected past and future, Mars and Earth, human and alien. The settlers of EO space stood transformed, carrying the light of discovery within them, ready to face the challenges and wonders of their new home with courage and compassion. The fragile harmony forged in the wake of the awakening was soon tested as the crew of EO space confronted realities that were darker and more complex than any had anticipated. The signal's revelations had ignited hope and unity, but they also exposed deep vulnerabilities in the mission's foundation, technical, psychological, and ethical. Elon Musk and his team now faced a reckoning not just with Mars, but with themselves. Tensions resurfaced when unexpected system failures began to plague the base. Critical life support modules showed signs of instability, forcing engineers into emergency repairs under extreme pressure. Power surges coincided suspiciously with the signal's peak transmissions, prompting fears that interaction with the Martian archive might be affecting their technology in unforeseen ways. Harper spearheaded investigations into the failures, working alongside Klein to isolate potential causes. The complexity of the integrated systems, combined with the mysterious influence of the signal, created a diagnostic nightmare. As repairs stretched into exhausting days, crew morale suffered. Arguments flared over resource allocation and risk management. The divide between pragmatists and visionaries re-emerged, this time fueled by fear of losing the tenuous foothold they had established on Mars. In this crucible, Elon found his leadership tested beyond technical innovation. He held late-night discussions with McKay and Vargas, grappling with decisions that could mean life or death for the crew. Should they continue deepening their engagement with the signal and risk destabilizing their base? Or should they sever communication with the archive, potentially losing invaluable knowledge? The moral weight of these choices was immense. The psychological toll was equally severe. Crew members began showing signs of stress-induced conditions, insomnia, anxiety, and even hallucinations. The emotional imprint of the Martian memories carried through the archive had intensified, causing some to question their own reality. McKay expanded mental health protocols and encouraged open dialogue, but the fractures in trust and resilience were difficult to mend. One night, a distressing incident crystallized the crisis. A junior engineer, overwhelmed by the psychological strain and fearing for her family back on Earth, sabotaged a secondary power system in a moment of panic. The resulting blackout lasted hours, endangering critical life support functions and nearly causing a catastrophic failure. The crew responded swiftly to stabilize the situation, but the breach of safety protocols heightened fears and suspicions. Elon confronted the engineer in a private conversation marked by empathy and resolve. "We're all carrying heavy burdens," he said. "But this mission depends on trust and cooperation. We have to find strength in each other, not division." The incident spurred a renewed commitment to transparency and support within the team. Meanwhile, external pressures mounted. Earth-based agencies debated the mission's continuation. Political leaders questioned the costs and risks, while public opinion fluctuated between awe and apprehension. Elon's public communications became crucial, balancing honesty with optimism. He emphasized the mission's potential to transform humanity's future, even as he acknowledged the daunting challenges ahead. In the midst of this turmoil, a breakthrough arrived. Klein discovered that the signal contained encoded safety protocols, advanced technologies designed to stabilize environments, regenerate ecosystems, and protect life. These findings reignited hope and provided practical solutions to the technical crises plaguing the base. The crew mobilized to implement the new systems, blending Martian wisdom with human ingenuity. Yet, as progress unfolded, an unsettling revelation surfaced. Analysis of the signal suggested that the Martian archive was not merely a passive record but an active intelligence, one that had been watching, learning, and perhaps even influencing their actions. This raised profound questions. Were they being guided, manipulated, or tested? The ethical implications rippled through the crew, forcing introspection on autonomy, free will, and the nature of consciousness. Elon convened a summit, inviting open debate on how to proceed. The discussions were intense and deeply personal. Some argued for continued cooperation with the archive, trusting its wisdom to guide humanity's next steps. Others advocated caution, fearing the loss of human agency and potential hidden dangers. The reckoning extended beyond Mars, touching the core of human identity. In a poignant moment, McKay reflected, "We must remember that exploration is not just about discovering new worlds but also about discovering ourselves. Our choices here will echo through generations." The crew implemented a hybrid approach, advancing cautiously with the archive's technologies while maintaining rigorous safeguards and ethical oversight. The reckoning was not resolved but transformed into a dynamic balance of hope and vigilance. Elon stood on the Martian surface, gazing at the horizon where red dust met a pale sky, aware that their greatest challenges lay ahead. The mission was no longer simply about survival or conquest, it was a profound journey of reckoning with the past, present, and future of humanity in the cosmos. After the harrowing reckoning, a new mood began to settle over Eos base, a fragile but growing sense of hope that emerged from the ashes of uncertainty and conflict. The crew, once divided and shaken, now found themselves gradually knitting back together, strengthened by the lessons of their ordeal and inspired by the possibilities that the Martian signal continued to reveal. Elon Musk, though still burdened by the immense responsibilities of leadership, sensed a renewed energy in the team. The breakthrough technologies derived from the archive's encoded protocols had stabilized the base's systems, restoring power and life support to full capacity. More than that, the knowledge they had gained sparked innovations in sustainable living and environmental restoration that promised not just survival, but flourishing. The pragmatists and visionaries, previously at odds, began to collaborate in new ways, merging their perspectives to create a more holistic mission strategy. This collaboration became a beacon of hope in itself, a testament to human adaptability and the power of shared purpose. As the crew ventured back into the cave system, their movements carried a different spirit, one of cautious optimism and reverence for the deep mysteries they were unlocking. The crystalline archive continued to pulse with light and emotion, its vast repository revealing new layers of knowledge with each interaction. Klein refined the AI's interpretative algorithms, enhancing their ability to decode the archive's complex language of symbols, frequencies, and memories. The AI's growing understanding offered insights not only into Martian history but also into universal principles of life, resilience, and interconnectedness. Harper and the scientific team expanded their research, applying the newfound wisdom to develop biological experiments that mimicked Martian ecosystems, aiming to restore balance and harmony in the harsh environment. These experiments, though in their infancy, carried profound implications for terraforming and the long-term habitability of Mars. Elon's public addresses reflected the awakening of hope within the crew and the mission itself. He spoke candidly about the challenges they had faced and the transformative potential of what they were discovering. His words resonated on Earth and beyond, rekindling interest and investment in space exploration and the broader quest for understanding humanity's place in the universe. Yet, the awakening was not merely technological or scientific, it was deeply personal. The emotional resonance of the Martian archive touched each crew member in unique ways, prompting introspection and growth. McKay observed subtle but significant changes in the crew's dynamics, greater empathy, openness, and a shared sense of meaning that transcended individual ambitions. Psychological support sessions evolved into communal gatherings where stories, fears, and hopes were shared openly, reinforcing bonds and nurturing resilience. Elon found himself more willing to express vulnerability and doubt, inspiring others to do the same. The mission's narrative shifted from one of isolation and struggle to one of connection and collective evolution. Among the many discoveries, one stood out with particular significance. The archive revealed a message encoded in light and sound, a universal call for stewardship of life and the cosmos. It was a profound philosophical statement that transcended species and civilizations, emphasizing harmony, respect, and the sacredness of existence. This message became a guiding principle for the crew, influencing their decisions and interactions with the Martian environment. The awakening of hope was not without its challenges. The crew remained vigilant for signs of environmental hazards and potential threats embedded within the archive's vast data. They maintained strict safety protocols and ethical guidelines, balancing curiosity with caution. Debates continued over the pace and scope of exploration, but these were marked by mutual respect and a shared commitment to the mission's core values. As the chapter progressed, small victories accumulated: successful implementation of bioregenerative systems, improved psychological well-being among crew members, and strengthened communications with Earth that conveyed both the mission's progress and its profound implications. These milestones fueled momentum, turning hope into tangible reality. Elon's reflections captured the essence of this transformation. Mars is teaching us that hope is not naive optimism but a deliberate act of courage and faith in our capacity to grow beyond our limitations. It's the awakening of our better selves. The crew's journey was becoming a story of awakening on multiple levels: technological, emotional, philosophical, and spiritual. The once barren and hostile Martian landscape was slowly being imbued with new life and meaning, mirroring the internal renewal unfolding within the explorers themselves. Eos Base stood as a symbol of human perseverance and hope. A shining outpost on the frontier of the unknown, ready to face the future with renewed strength and vision. The mission was no longer just about surviving on Mars, it was about thriving, evolving, and embracing the infinite possibilities of life among the stars. Just as the awakening of hope began to strengthen the spirit of the crew and the mission, subtle shadows of doubt crept in, threatening to unravel the fragile progress they had made. The vastness of Mars and the enigmatic nature of the signal from the ancient archive continued to challenge their understanding, stirring questions that cut deeper than any technical problem or external threat. Elon Musk found himself wrestling not only with the external pressures of leadership but with internal uncertainties about the mission's ultimate purpose and the ethical ramifications of their discoveries. The signal that had once felt like a beacon of wisdom and connection now sometimes seemed like a puzzle with pieces that didn't quite fit, a riddle laced with ambiguity and unease. The cracks first appeared in quiet moments of reflection among the crew. Harper noticed that some team members began withdrawing, caught in silent contemplation or subtle paranoia. Nighttime conversations revealed whispered concerns about the influence of the archive, fears that they might be losing their autonomy or becoming pawns in a cosmic game they didn't understand. Klein's AI, which had grown increasingly sophisticated in interpreting the signal, began detecting anomalies, patterns that suggested the presence of unknown variables or even deliberate obfuscation embedded in the transmissions. These anomalies sparked intense debates among the crew about whether the archive was entirely benevolent or held darker intentions. Elon called an emergency meeting to address the rising tensions. The room was thick with anxiety as voices expressed conflicting perspectives. Some argued for cautious disengagement from the archive to preserve human independence. Others warned that rejecting the knowledge would squander an unprecedented opportunity for advancement. Elon listened carefully, knowing that the reckoning they faced was not just technical but philosophical. The question was no longer simply what they could learn from Mars, but who they were becoming in the process. Amid this turmoil, an unexpected event heightened the sense of urgency. During a routine scan, Harper's instruments detected a series of seismic tremors beneath the base. At first dismissed as minor geological activity, the tremors intensified, causing structural vibrations and forcing emergency protocols to secure the habitat. The source remained elusive, deep underground and beyond immediate reach. Klein and Harper hypothesized that the energy emissions from the archive or their interaction with the Martian environment might be triggering tectonic disturbances. The crew grappled with the possibility that their presence and actions could be destabilizing the planet in unforeseen ways. This revelation deepened the shadows of doubt, as the mission's noble goals collided with the harsh realities of an alien world. The psychological impact was palpable. Crew members who had embraced the awakening with enthusiasm now faced fear and uncertainty about the consequences of their exploration. Trust frayed as suspicions arose over decisions made behind closed doors and conflicting interpretations of the signal. Elon struggled to maintain cohesion, balancing transparency with the need to prevent panic. McKay intensified mental health interventions, recognizing that the crew's emotional resilience was as critical as any technical system. As tension simmered, a confidential transmission from Earth complicated matters further. Political and corporate interests debated the mission's future with increasing skepticism. Funding was threatened, and public opinion swayed by sensationalist reports casting doubt on the mission's viability and intentions. Elon's leadership was scrutinized, and the crew felt the weight of isolation growing heavier. In this crucible, Elon found strength in a rare conversation with Harper. She reminded him of the very essence of exploration, embracing the unknown, confronting fears, and finding meaning in struggle. Doubt is a natural part of growth, she said quietly. It means we're still learning, still alive. Inspired by this, Elon renewed his commitment to open dialogue and collective decision-making. He established forums where crew members could voice concerns, share experiences, and participate in shaping the mission's path forward. This approach helped rebuild trust, even as uncertainty lingered. Meanwhile, Klein's AI made a startling discovery. Hidden within the archive was a warning encoded in a complex, layered signal. It suggested that the ancient Martian civilization had faced catastrophic collapse triggered by unchecked technological hubris and ecological collapse. This revelation struck a chilling parallel with Earth's own trajectory, forcing the crew to confront uncomfortable truths about their mission's stakes and their responsibilities as stewards of two worlds. The warning deepened the shadows of doubt but also clarified the stakes. The mission was not merely about exploration or survival, it was about learning from history to avoid repeating tragic mistakes. Elon addressed the crew with solemn resolve: "We have a choice. We can be the generation that rises to this challenge or the one that falls victim to it. Our doubts must fuel our courage, not paralyze us." The shadows of doubt had not vanished but had evolved into a powerful catalyst for reflection, growth, and renewed determination. The crew of EO Space stood at a crossroads, aware that their journey was as much inward as outward, and that the future of humanity on Mars, and on Earth, depended on their ability to face the unknown with honesty, humility, and hope. With the shadows of doubt casting long reflections over EO Space, the crew found themselves compelled to look beyond the immediate crises and uncertainties, reaching toward a horizon both literal and metaphorical that promised new possibilities. Elon Musk understood that to move forward, they needed not only solutions but vision, an expansive perspective that embraced complexity and the unknown with courage and curiosity. The base had stabilized, the seismic tremors contained for now, and the archive's warnings deeply integrated into the mission's evolving philosophy. Yet the question remained: what lay beyond the horizon of their current knowledge and experience? As the Martian dawn broke each day with its pale light filtering through the habitat windows, the crew prepared for a bold new expedition into unexplored terrain, guided by the insights gleaned from the archive. This journey was more than geographical, it was a voyage into uncharted intellectual and emotional landscapes. Harper led the scientific team in equipping the rover with advanced sensors capable of detecting subtle environmental changes, biogenic markers, and electromagnetic anomalies. Their destination was a vast canyon system rumored by satellite data to harbor remnants of subsurface water and unique mineral formations that could shed light on Mars' ancient ecosystems. Klein's AI worked in tandem, analyzing terrain maps, weather patterns, and signal fluctuations to optimize the route and predict challenges. The crew's preparations were meticulous, reflecting the lessons learned from past crises. Every system was tested repeatedly, and contingency plans were in place for the unpredictable Martian environment. Elon, Harper, McKay, Klein, and a select team boarded the rover for the first leg of the journey. As the rover rolled over the red dust and into the rugged landscape, a profound sense of awe and humility settled over them. Mars was no longer an alien wilderness but a living narrative, layered with history, mystery, and potential. The journey demanded resilience and adaptability. Dust storms arose without warning, mechanical systems strained against the terrain, and communications occasionally flickered. Yet the crew's synergy deepened. They supported each other through moments of exhaustion and frustration, embodying the mission's evolving ethos of collaboration and mutual care. During a pause atop a ridge overlooking a sprawling canyon network, Elon reflected on the horizon before them. The jagged cliffs and shadowed valleys seemed to whisper stories of epochs past, of water flowing, life flourishing, and civilizations rising and falling. He shared with the team a vision of humanity's future on Mars not as conquerors but as stewards, learning from the planet's history to build a sustainable and compassionate presence. As they descended into the canyon, the rover's instruments detected traces of organic molecules and water ice, tantalizing signs that life, or its remnants, might persist beneath the surface. These discoveries energized the crew, affirming their belief in the mission's significance and the potential for groundbreaking scientific breakthroughs. Klein's AI uncovered patterns in the electromagnetic spectrum that suggested the presence of previously unknown energy fields, possibly linked to the ancient archive or natural Martian phenomena. These fields exhibited a rhythmic, almost musical quality that resonated deeply with the crew, reinforcing the idea that Mars was a planet alive with subtle forces beyond current human understanding. Throughout the expedition, the crew documented their experiences with vivid descriptions and emotional reflections, weaving a narrative that connected empirical data with the profound human experience of exploration. Harper noted, "We're not just uncovering rocks and minerals, we're uncovering meaning." The emotional journey paralleled the physical one. Moments of awe and inspiration mingled with fatigue and doubt, creating a rich tapestry of human resilience. Elon and McKay encouraged open conversations about fears, hopes, and the weight of their mission, fostering a supportive environment that strengthened psychological well-being. The horizon also beckoned with questions about the legacy they would leave. What stories would future generations tell about this mission? How would humanity's relationship with Mars shape the broader quest for knowledge and survival? These questions infused the crew's efforts with a sense of purpose that transcended individual ambitions. As they reached a cavernous outcrop illuminated by bioluminescent minerals, a phenomenon previously unknown to science, the crew experienced a moment of collective wonder. The glowing walls pulsed softly, casting shifting patterns of light that seemed to communicate an ancient message of endurance and harmony. The discovery resonated deeply, symbolizing the promise and mystery of the horizon beyond. Elon captured the moment in a transmission to Earth, saying, "Beyond the horizon lies not just new terrain but new understanding." Mars is teaching us that exploration is a path of continual awakening, of seeing the unseen, hearing the unheard, and becoming more fully ourselves. The chapter closed with the rover's ascent from the canyon, the horizon broad and open, beckoning with infinite possibilities. The crew returned to Eos Base transformed, wiser, more connected, and more determined to face the challenges and wonders that awaited. The mission was a testament to humanity's enduring spirit, a journey beyond the horizon that promised to redefine the very essence of what it meant to be explorers, dreamers, and caretakers of worlds. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?